Commissioner.
Yeah, that's all right.
We'll swear you in.
So I suppose I should tell you I'm Wayne Higdon, resident of Burlington, actively involved with the Historical Commission, actively involved with this historical shed project.
Sure.
So I'm open to questions, whichever way you want to run it.
All right.
Do we want to wait until they're here so that they have all the representation?
Oh, do we still have more
No,
representation?
if they're coming.
Do you know if they're coming to the meeting?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Joyce is
Probably
not here tonight.
Should have invited.
Then we shouldn't wait.
Joyce is not available
You
tonight.
want to table it? Be my guest?
You guys had a
It's really
discussion?
up to you.
Ed and I had a
We
discussion.
just heard about it.
Yeah, we met with, if the subcommittee voted 2-0 in favor, and we discussed the different aspects of it. I sent out an updated spreadsheet that more clearly enumerated the costs, and because we had a $33,000 warrant article back in 2022, we spent about $6,000 of it. And we enumerated the costs and got adjustments to the different line items. I shared that with you right before the meeting because we just got it
Okay.
late this afternoon. And then we met, we talked through the merits of it, some of the historical aspect of why the costs came up with the fact that it was sitting on RO property but wasn't deemed RO, and the building needed a special permit, and so the planning board added some requirements to that, like the HVAC system and the alarm, the electrical, and plus the roofing material. We enumerated, and we've decided to vote in favor of it 2-0. I could join the conference and put the new spreadsheet up there if you would like me.
No, I'd rather people either have time, if you want to review it, let's just postpone until
I
next
had a
week.
few things to drill down on.
Okay.
I want
Okay.
to make sure they have their full.
Then I will make a motion to
Representatives here.
postpone until next week.
Perfect.
Second.
And I'll vote on
Just to
that.
confirm, the published warrant at 100K, that is the amount where,
That would be the amount that we're going for.
Right.
The thing that's still outstanding is the cost of the labor. They're hoping to get Shawsheen, but they're budgeting in the labor in case we have to go out to bid.
Yep.
And the thing is that at current prevailing labor rates, we may not have enough with the 43,000 to do it.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second to postpone this until next week. Cheyenne?
So moved. Yes.
I'll take that as yes. Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
Mike Hardy? Oh, not here. John Eiler?
Yes.
Fix that. Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 13-0-0. Thank you. I'm sorry, but
Do I need to know any specific requests from the Ways and Means as to what we bring for material?
I think we,
sent Steve's stuff.
yeah, I can forward that. I forwarded that to Joyce already.
Okay.
I consolidated the list and forwarded that to Joyce. The question is we need to confirm whether Joyce can be available with us next week or not. And is that, do you want me to confirm it, or is that for you?
Joyce.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
thank you for coming.
I'm going to stick around for another one.
3-2, Council on Aging Fitness Equipment. Marge?
Hello. I know my voice doesn't carry through the mask. I apologize for that.
Maybe pull the mic a little
Yeah.
closer and that'll help.
Okay, I got yelled at yesterday from one of the seniors for not being able to hear me. So,
We'll let you start, you guys.
Yeah, sure. I think that this is Marge can talk a little bit more. This is a pretty straightforward request, replacing the 3 treadmills, a recumbent bike, and a stationary bike in the senior center. They're at the point where repairs are needed to be made. These are generally equipment that aren't great to repair with aftermarket parts, or, once they start to break down, it's time to replace them. I think that another element of it for a safety aspect and for a program aspect is replacing them all to be the same machines. That's, I think, important for continuity at the senior center, so that folks get comfortable with the machines, they know the machines, and it's helpful that way. And I think that from a program perspective, this has become more and more of a priority at the senior center, and I think that we had a good discussion about what, at the subcommittee meeting, about how important this space is going to be, how important that expanded space in the future will be a consideration for fitness programs. Unrelated to this, but it was just a really important part of the sort of, I said I would let Marge talk, but you're right.
It's okay.
All right.
I will say that, the more we invest in their health and their physical well-being, the less expensive it is down the road with fire and ambulances and all of that. So it's something to kind of keep in mind when we're talking about fitness with the seniors. The stronger they are, the less likely they are to fall, the less likely they are to get sick. And if they do get sick, it's an easier illness for them. So it's important. The room that we have the fitness equipment in is packed in the mornings. And we do use commercial equipment, not, the regular cheap stuff that, is only going to last for a short time. I did a little bit of research into how old this equipment is, and I'm actually kind of shocked. We bought it in little stages starting in 2013 through 2014, so it is probably well past its need. And the place that we buy it from that also does the work on them said that they're having trouble getting parts now. So the next time something breaks, we're probably going to have to toss it. So it's definitely time to replace.
Okay. Subcommittee?
John Eilenar subbed in for Town Hall 2 and voted 2-0 in favor.
Town Hall 2 appreciates that. Thank you.
Any questions?
Just curious, where are you getting the equipment from?
It's Precision Fitness. They're on the bid list, and fire and police also use them.
Okay, excellent. And so it's going to be the 3 treadmills, the 2 bikes, and the rower?
Yes.
Oh.
We just had to replace the rower, and we took that out of our state money. And then we have an ergometer, and that seems to be fine, so we'll just replace that one next time, whenever it breaks.
Do you have any free weights in the?
We do. We have some dumbbells, lightweight, nothing heavy. I had hoped to get a universal weight set for people to work out on, but we don't have the space for it, so that will not occur for a while.
I think that's an excellent idea for the seniors when you get that space. Yeah.
You're not old enough.
Someday.
Around the corner. Give them time.
You're showing a
I
little
want
too
to make
much
sure that
interest.
that facility is ready to go when I'm ready, when they're ready for me.
Any other questions? Chris?
Just curious from perspective of seniors who may not know how to use these machines, is there, I'm going to guess, knowing how good your department is, but there's ways that people can learn how to use them, or?
Yes, we have a monitor, and they're not allowed to use the room unless there's someone else in the room with them.
Answered both my questions I was going to ask. Thank you.
Anybody else? The motion? Cheyenne?
Yes, thank you. Is there a reason we're using different brands in the interest of continuity? Vision Fitness and Landis both make treadmills and bikes.
It was cost, for one thing, and we're just replacing the equipment we have with the same brand that we already have. So the treadmills are being replaced with the same brand, and the bikes are being replaced with the same brand.
Thank you.
Now, we had a motion and a second, I believe.
Second.
Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Yes. Frank Monaco?
Yes?
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes, 13-0-0. And is that your only item?
That's it. That's it.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Marge?
Get him on the treadmill.
We'll use it.
Article 3-3, Conservation Land Management and Acquisition Program. Oh, I need to, I'm sorry, that last article was $30,000 from free cash. Article 3-3 is $20,000 from free cash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and Eileen Coleman, our Conservation Administrator, here with me. So the next two articles are conservation articles that are a little bit different from an approach from, I think, that this committee and town meeting may be used to. So I think that one of the hopes, I think one of them is, the next one is a little bit more straightforward than the first one, but this is something that Eileen and I developed thinking about some of the needs of the Conservation Department, or the, I guess, sort of strategic and tactical approach that we'd like to take with conservation land and potential conservation land. So as much as we seek your approval tonight, we also, I think, also seek guidance, feedback onto how this may be or may not be a right fit for town meeting. I think that we got some good, helpful feedback from the subcommittee, but I think that we're very much interested in that feedback as well. So the first one, the land acquisition program, the idea behind this is that within the budget, the sort of general operating budget, there isn't a lot of room for sort of discretionary spending when things come up like this. So the idea behind this is when we see opportunities for strategic acquisition of additional conservation space that is not conservation space right now, but may abut conservation land, and either that may come from purchasing it, it may come from it being donated from a landowner that is close to conservation land or abutting conservation land, because I think that one of the goals of the Conservation Department is to be able to expand access to natural resources when possible, and to expand opportunities for conservation of open space. And so when we have run into that in the last year and a half, 2 years in these situations, and notwithstanding these situations alone, they often require some funds to make them happen. Not even the actual obtaining of the land and going to town meeting and either paying for the land, but actually assessing the land. So oftentimes these require appraisals, they require deed work, they require things that may not fit within a budget that we have available. So the idea here is to actually just create a fund that would be able to provide funds for that purpose should those situations come up. So what would this fund be used for? Like I said, appraisals, some specialized legal work, if it's a tax title issue that needs to be resolved, or if there's a title search issue, deed cleanup. We've run into those situations before. So I think that, as I mentioned, this is one that certainly we are looking for guidance on fit. We're looking for guidance on your sort of thoughts on it, and obviously guidance on best course for approval from this group and town meeting, because we recognize it's a little bit different from a capital request where we're purchasing a certain thing. This is more of a developing a fund in order to be ready when opportunities come up for conservation land.
Subcommittee?
Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support, and I think we generally thought the idea was a good one, to be prepared to handle the overhead of potential acquisitions. I think the other place that the funds might have come for something like this might be out of the general legal budget, but that already sort of is spoken for some things, and it's not dedicated to a conservation purpose. But it's sort of a being prepared move.
John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a quick thing. You may notice in the backup that the dollar amount's different. Both this and the next article were reduced from the original request to right-size it for the budget. So that's the number is correct that you're voting on here. The other thing I would just throw in, I agree with Roger. It's a great idea. The only possible suggestion is, think about this in terms of maybe making it not conservation specific, because we may acquire land for other purposes other than conservation, like rec department or whatever. But it's a possibility for future years to expand the concept a little.
Other, Deb? Nice cup. Nice cup.
Thank you. Is there, I noticed there were a couple potential plots of land. I mean, where does this cash sit until it's needed? Does it just stay in free cash, or?
Yeah, it would go to a capital article. So the other reason that this is not in the operating budget and is in an article is that we don't know when these situations, these are so based on other people's timing sometimes, that if Eileen came to me and John and say August, we might say, yeah, it's the start of the fiscal year, we can make it work in the budget, and here's some money for an appraisal and legal fees related to it. If it was today, it might be a lot tougher based on where we are in the year, and having a better picture of the fiscal year, and understanding that there's very little discretionary funds there. So that's the reason why it's positioned the way it is as a capital article, so that it can sort of carry over from fiscal year to fiscal year. And if, as program right now, sort of funding it at every other year, it provides an opportunity to say, sort of build up if necessarily, if there's a sort of larger parcel that we have our eye on, or something comes up and we haven't spent in a couple of years. And so that's an opportunity too.
Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What's the decision process when anyone comes forward with a request to use some of this money? What approves the use of it?
So I think that it would be, the contact would probably end up coming through Eileen, or she would end up sort of identifying something, and it would probably be a decision like any other sort of financial decision that's made. The department makes a requisition and it's approved probably from the administrator's office on how best, because this one is unique that it's potential future property acquisition, so it's something that the administrator's office would definitely have to be involved in, and counsel, and so I think that it'd be a partnership.
But I agree, it would probably start with me, likely, because people do contact us if they have a piece of land that they just want to inquire about its
So let's
value.
assume that money builds up in there. This could roll over year on year, right? So there could be more than $40,000 in there.
Yeah, we're asking for 20, but yes, if we didn't spend it for the next 4 years, and there's,
So you'd have access to a significant amount of money, and the decision on, when you bring something forward, the decision on whether to go ahead with it and how much to use and how much to spend would fall under the administration and whatever department is bringing it forward.
right, and these funds wouldn't be necessarily used for the actual acquisition of property.
No,
That would
but
need to be done through town meeting, but yes, so what, this would actually be one of our places where we start testing our purchase order requisition plan, where everything would require a requisition to be approved by, submitted by the department, approved by the administrator's office, approved by purchasing. So,
Okay. So you have really the spending authority. And the other thing, I think that's fine. The other thing is it's not clear. I mean, it's sort of general, and even to John's point, this can be made more general. It's pretty open for all kinds of things that generally fall in the category of recreation and conservation. Is that a fair?
I don't think it's unfair. I think that as it's printed in the warrant, it's
it's printed as conservation land. So, I mean, I thought it was a good suggestion about other strategic acquisitions that may not be open space. I don't know if within the four corners of the article right now, if that would be, if we could spend it on anything other than conservation, but for future land, for future articles, it may be wise to be a little bit more open.
But it's not really governed by a bylaw. It's governed by kind of a gentleman's agreement when we fund this thing, right? On what it can be spent on.
You know, I think that the article, or the sub-article title is conservation land, and I think that
that would guide it.
That's, to me, like any other article, it's guiding based on the authority that's presented to the body.
And if at any point, and I guess the control the town meeting would have over this is not put more money in it.
Correct, or we may see that, I mean, that we don't need future requests because we have enough funds, that, you know, based on where the plan is right now.
Right.
So
this is a year-to-year evaluation, really, of how much to put in.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Chris?
So looking at the description, it talks about, can also be used for examples, trail maintenance or clearing of invasive, pruning, removing vegetation. So does conservation have properties that they're currently maintaining that those funds could also be used for?
We do, it could. That wasn't really the intent. It was more about preparing potential new properties, because they might have been, already had some uses or had fences on them that were, you know, preventing people from getting through in a certain way, and I was just more thinking about removal in that way. But I guess we could. It's not...
The next
Yes.
article is really at the heart of, that's at the heart of what we would be doing in the next article, is sort of existing conservation land. That would be, as Eileen said, you know, any work that needs to be done to sort of prepare or clean up that property that's acquired.
That was the intent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm definitely not against the idea of this. I think my only other question is, why not under the purview of like the select board? I mean, I see this as the kicking the tires before a property acquisition of, is this worth going down? And before bringing to town meeting of, let's say, $350,000 for an acre of land that may, whatever.
Right.
Right, we're trying to really see, is it worth it? Is there a dump site on it that's going to take a lot of money to clean up? Or I get that. But I guess why the conservation department and why not a voting authority department? And I understand that, yes, this is small money, but just if there was a other reason for just conservation.
Yeah, so the article started as a, let's have an opportunity to expand conservation land, and the only, you know, we talked about this very thing in the subcommittee meeting, is conservation land is just handled differently from a legal perspective. So I actually don't know the mechanics of the custody and whether or not it would be classified immediately as Chapter 97 land, and how the deed would look there. So like that's an interesting distinction between, there is such a distinction between open space and conservation. Conservation is open space, but open space isn't necessarily conservation. Is that fair?
That is pretty fair, yes.
Right. And so there is open space that we have in town that is outside the care and custody of the Conservation Commission and with other boards and committees. So, you know, I think that we see this as definitely as a partnership to understand how best to enhance the open space. And so, not really a great answer for you, but I think that that's sort of the goal, is enhance open space where we can.
Right.
And how jurisdictionally that looks, I think that part of that informs, part of these funds would inform that.
Once the deed is made over to conservation, it does become a conservation area. If it helps, there have been times when somebody has inquired about, hey, I have this land, it's next to conservation land, let's talk about it. And it comes down to, do they want to donate it? Do they want to purchase it? And it's good for everybody to just have an idea of the sort of fair market value of this and how much it might cost, for example, to bring to make that developable, which may help them make a decision.
It's gonna see you. My second one. It's like, I was sad that you guys were gone. It was like,
Donald is.
I was freaking happy as heck. Go back out.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Me and Dad were sad.
No, I muted us.
I told her to remember, she said that.
I did it.
Yeah, you need to go into the dots again. and,
There we go.
They muted.
Okay.
We're good.
There you go.
I got him. Just took me a minute to find the right button. Okay. Yeah. Chris, then David, then me.
It just seems like you're trying to do two things. One, have money available for the deed, research, appraisals, and then from reading the article, money for maintenance of trails and things of that nature. I mean, is it appropriate to kind of commingle the two concepts?
I don't think it's the intent to commingle the two concepts, so I think that, and that could probably be cleaner in the request.
We
So
could pull that out.
3-3, which is what we're talking about now, is really about deed research, appraisal, those types of things. I think that, yes, there may be a component, in probably a more rare case, of that we have to actually clean up that land once we get it, but the primary objective is the appraisal, deed, etc. The next article, which I think some of this language is probably a better fit for that request page, is the actual maintenance of trail, open space types of conservation land. So I think the intent is very much untethered from those two ideas, but probably not communicated well in the form.
Right, and I think perhaps that needs to be cleaned up a little bit.
Yes.
David.
So again, my initial thought when I first read it before we had the discussion was that, yes, this would be a perfect place in the legal area. I understand now what we're driving at and agree more with this concept. This is what I'm wrestling with, is it sounds like most of the costs that are associated, again, so let me ask this first question. How often does this come before the conservation? How often are...
It's entirely variable, but I've been director for less than 2 years, and in that time there have been 2 properties that I've had discussions with people about their land and whether or not it was going to be something for conservation in some way or another.
Sure. And in those discussions, are people coming just to kick the tires of the town? Listen, I'm next to a conservation area, maybe the town wants to buy it from me. Or I've got a small sliver, I can donate it. And it seems like it's the purchase that, where we're entertaining a purchase, is where this money's going to be spent.
Well, in some cases, even in donations, there, or an appraisal is required and that deed work is done because they want to see an appraisal so that they can understand how much the value is that they're donating.
Why would we be doing that? Why wouldn't they be doing that?
Because we want the space.
No, but the sellers, if the seller's saying, I'd love to donate this, but can you do all the appraisal work and give it to me so that I know what I'm getting?
Yeah, I think the idea is what I have seen in the past, and this is always not something, this is more anecdotal, but people have an area of property that they want to donate. They may not have the funds to do those types of things. They either want to sort of unload a certain property, and if they now have to spend $8,000 or $9,000 on an appraisal of something that they're going to donate, that may not be advantageous to them. But for us, it's the cost of obtaining the property so that we can enhance our conservation profile.
But we could go through, if it's in kind, and they just needed that information, we could put something under agreement and then go and do that necessary work. If it's going to be an in-kind donation. If it's going to be a purchase, now the select board's going to have to get involved. We're going to have to figure out what sort of negotiations we're going to need to do. And do we want to buy this? So what I'm not interested in is setting up kind of that account that people come in to kick the tires and we start going down the path and ordering appraisals and doing this work and then find out we're just not interested. So we have the money set aside for that work, but the select board has to decide whether they want to move forward. The town has to decide whether they want to buy. And what are we really gaining in in this, because I don't know how much it's coming up where we need to do all of this work before a purchase. We're going to have time. We can come to for reserve funds transfer. If they were real serious about getting something up front, and then we work through those. I just don't know.
It's not necessarily frequent, but like Patrick already said, we don't know when it's going to come up. And the kick to the tires people tend to be the ones who are considering selling it to us, and they really want to know if it's worth their while.
Right, but they're coming to us. They're coming to us generally. Okay, I have a piece of land next to conservation. Okay, what's your number? They're the ones that are going to sell it. So the tire kicking starts with them to say, it isn't like, what would you be willing to give me? And then we go through all this exercise and we say 50,000, and they say, I was thinking more 2 million.
I think we have to either offer or at least know fair market value.
Right,
in order
or we need to know, are they an interested party, or are they just a tire kicker where now we're spending money to figure out, are they real or not? So that's why I just don't want to go down the path of all these spending the money and then we've spent money on things that really.
I think that's a fair thing and we sort of started this as we've been wrestling with this a little bit too. We're interested in the concept of being able to be, for lack of a better term, like shovel ready to go for these types of things. But yeah, there are some elements that's good feedback that we're wondering whether or not this approach is sort of a wholesale make sense approach, and that's what we're wrestling with.
So, do we have a goal as to how much conservation protected land we would like to see? For the Conservation Commission, I assume your job is to say all of it. To some degree, kind of.
I don't believe that these days, or certainly not in the last 15 or 20 years, we've had a stated goal of a certain number of acres, because the town is pretty fairly built out. There are definitely pockets of undeveloped lands and paper streets out there that just haven't been developed. So I don't have an exact acreage to give you. We have something like 300-ish right now.
Well, so I think this comes into what's recreation open space and what's conservation open space. But together, recreation and conservation open space, we have more than that. We have 1,312 acres within Burlington, and that's 17.3% of our area. That puts us third in the 5 towns, the other 4 towns that touch us. We'll never catch up with Lexington and Bedford, because they're around 25%, and we're significantly above Billerica and Wilmington. My concern is if we then take a piece of property like that, I do get there are some landlocked and paper streets, but that property still may have value for trade. We've seen that in town a lot. When somebody wants to do something and then they may trade it, some builder may trade it to the town for something. But if it has a fence on it, which you mentioned, things like that, that means it was a residential property. So one, we have a housing problem now, and I'd hate to see us taking buildable lots off the market, and two, I hate to see it something that we could collect $1 of tax money on.
Fences doesn't necessarily imply that there was a house on the lot. They just may have had fences that were even potentially for the protection of other property owners that perhaps abut them, so that their kids aren't running onto this land that has all wetland and potentially pools on it. It doesn't necessarily mean it was built. None of the parcels that I've been involved with in the past few years have been already built, but they are on streets that were at some point possibly considered for building.
Mm-hmm. Frank?
But to pursue, for any transfer to happen, though, it still has to come to town meeting.
Yep.
The selectmen have
Yes,
to bring
it
it
does.
to town meeting. So your concern, which is a very valid one, we're taking things off the market or out of circulation that we would rather have used for something else, even commercially, that can only happen if town meeting approves the acquisition and the transfer.
Sure.
So I would be, I think, knowing that, I'm hoping that the administration would be very sensitive to, does this really make sense in light of that kind of a situation? And in light of, do we, you know, what do we want this for? That they need to sort of pre-qualify that before they pursue even surveying or anything, I would think.
Yes, and, yeah, I think that's a great point, Mr. Chairman, and I do agree that that would never be the intent, right? And frankly, that land is so valuable that anything's buildable. It would be way outside the scope of what we'd be able to what we'd even consider bringing from an
Right.
affordability perspective of it.
It is a valid concern.
Extremely unlikely
Yes.
anybody would be offering it to us.
I'm banking on the initiation of any of this would take that thinking into consideration before they went down a path we probably shouldn't go down and don't want to go down. The other thing, Doug...
Well, if it's unbuildable, it's kind of open space, and as it is.
What's that?
If it's unbuildable, it's kind of open space as it is, and we might not get to take credit for it, but it's still accomplishing the same thing. And
you mean you could leave it alone? Yeah, well...
We're paying somebody to leave it alone. They're leaving it alone and have been for 500 years, so...
I can think of a few parcels like that, but... So the other thing I just wanted to pursue a little bit, Doug, Burlington is very small, so on a percentage basis, we may look, you know, flush. But in terms of total acreage that we actually own outside of the landlocked parcel, I'm not sure that we have, and I suppose Mill Pond, we have very much conservation.
Well, and we have Mary Cummins Park, which is not our responsibility.
Not ours.
Oh, I'm sorry. Do they check IDs? Is there a wall? It's open space, yes.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And again, anything of any size, it still has to come before an acquiring, even if it's free, I think the transfer has got to come to town meeting. Correct me if I'm wrong. If that isn't the case, we got a big problem.
No, we can't acquire land without...
Sure.
So I think we're sort of protected, but I get your point.
Just a thought.
Yeah.
I'm not mad about it. Anybody else, other thoughts?
I guess, probably going back too far, but the name of the warrant article as a land acquisition program kind of implies you're actually going to buy the land. This is for money for the land. And clearly, the intent, if you read a little deeper, is it's just for appraisals and some other things. But in terms of communicating it, I think you need to be clear that, you know, this is not money to buy land. And as Frank pointed out, you know, all of those acquisitions have a long process to go through that end in town meeting before they can occur. So it really is just the legal prep work.
Right, and I'm telling you, I'm learning a lot about wording this year. And the importance of, and I thank you.
Yeah, so
Right.
with respect to the wording about cleaning up the property, I think potentially, since it's reducing the scope of the warrant article, we could remove that language as part of the warrant article that Ways and Means sends to town meeting. If that's useful. I mean, we could reduce the scope. We can't increase it. But if it's confusing, we could probably take that language out of the warrant. I don't know whether it's actually in the warrant or it's in the backup. If it's in the backup, it sort of doesn't matter.
It is in the warrant, right? I wouldn't have any objection to that, because I understand what you're saying about the confusion of the two.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it's clear that you need the funds for appraisals and the deed research and things of that nature, but then you get into the maintenance of the land, it's just two separate thought processes.
It is, yep.
And that's what I think kind of throws people. Before you know it, you're spending more money on the trails.
That goes much quicker, yeah.
So,
Nothing on the land.
so do we have a recommendation for an amendment to change the wording?
I didn't look at the language, so
Well, if you look at the justification section, that kind of doesn't go into some of those other components, so maybe that would work.
The warrant just says the title. It doesn't have anything more than that. So I don't know if there's anything
Okay.
to adjust.
Okay.
Because the backup is really what we're discussing, but that isn't
That is
the warrant.
Right.
So I don't think there's anything to adjust in the warrant per se.
Title's okay.
The title's good, yeah.
Well, the title.
Well, I mean, the title's the misleading part, but if people.
I
dig
guess
in-
you could just call it land acquisition program prep instead of land management acquisition. You could remove the word management if you wanted to, I guess.
It's will of the body. We just got a lot of articles.
Okay. I'm happy to move on without making an amendment.
Ed,
Apologies, but thank you. The backup contains one quote and invoice for assessing some properties on Old Sawmill Road. Is that just meant to be an example of something this
Oh,
would?
that's, you're talking about the appraisal? That was an example, so you can see how much a typical appraisal cost the last time we did one, which was 3 years ago. I just wanted to give you an idea of, that's one, it would be 8,000, just so you know how the money would go.
Right.
Two in a year, and then a lot of the money's gone.
Thank you. Is there anything in the warrant article that constrains the use of these funds? How is the scope of what you could allocate this fund for governed?
So that's a good question. I think that, like any warrant articles, we rely on the what is being presented to town meeting and what is being approved as presented and in the warrant. And these free cash articles, it really is is not actual like article languages, but there's, so I think that so we base our approvals on, is this the intent and scope of what has been presented to town meeting?
Mm-hmm.
And is this within scope of what was shared in the backup and what was provided at public meetings and all of that? So I think that and all the other financial controls and the 5 people that sign off on anything before it happens, so.
So legislative history does govern here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
a motion?
Move to approve?
Second.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve Article 3-3 Conservation Land Management.
Cheyenne had his hand up, though. I don't know if that's...
I'm sorry, Cheyenne, is that
It's still,
remnant or is it a new one?
It's down.
Thank you.
Magic.
We have a motion and a second for Article 3-3 Conservation Land Management and Acquisition Program, $20,000 from free cash. Cheyenne?
Yeah.
Chris?
Yes, thank you.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rasso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
yes.
David Tate?
No.
Chair votes yes, 12-1-0. Next one, 3-4 Conservation Hazard Mitigation Program, $25,000 from free cash.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. So this article really relates to let me start by saying hazard mitigation. Trees are primarily the aspect here that we're talking about. A lot of times that's invasives, management of invasive species, which often ends up resulting in tree falls. But I want to start by saying I know that in some of the feedback we've got from the Capital Committee and what we've heard, and what I've heard anecdotally, I know that there's potentially some sensitivity around trees and the management of sort of the tree resources here. So we present this article with sensitivity to that, but we still think it's a priority related to the management of our conservation land and open space access. So what I'll ask Eileen to do to talk a little bit about why we have this request and some of the challenges we currently have with the management of things like this on conservation and open space, conservation trails.
Sure, I'll be very brief. So as I mentioned, we have about 300 acres of conservation areas, conservation lands altogether. Not all of our conservation areas have trails, but the ones that do are pretty frequently walked. We've got Mill Pond, Sawmill, Marion Road, Little Brook. They're all frequently visited, and we get calls fairly frequently from people, or emails from people saying, there's a tree on the trail. And a lot of times when there's something that's already fallen down across the trail, that's something we can manage ourselves. When it's something like a tree that's been struck by lightning, did they see any of these?
No, I think we can, no.
Okay, I had provided some
Subcommittee,
pictures that the subcommittee saw. We created slides. I gave you some visuals of trees that have been, say, struck by lightning, so they're partially hanging over trails. And those are the ones that have proven much more tricky to take down. As you know, a single tree costs $2,000 to $3,000 to remove. I did have a situation about a year and a half ago when over time several trees and branches and limbs had fallen, and they had created a blockage in one of the streams in Sawmill Conservation Area, and that was threatening downstream properties and little bridge that's in there. And I needed to have those removed, but it's also very tricky to access a spot like that. You can't bring in machinery, at least not without taking down more trees. So what we find that we end up doing is we ask DPW if they have some staff or some funds for us. We ask the rec department if they have staff or some funds that we can use. As it turns out, with the blockage, we actually were able to use some of the resources that the Board of Health had on hand. So what I just find is that these things do happen all the time, or at least a couple of times a year, and I'm left waiting for weeks while there's something hanging over a trail while I go around sort of cap in hand asking who else has a little bit of wiggle room in their budget that they can help me. So I thought it would be a good idea if we put something into a fund to deal with things like hazardous trees, but it could also be used for stuff like invasive management, just to make things a little smoother.
Yeah, so right now, there's, Eileen doesn't really have a budget for this type of land management activity, and while Public Works and our friends at Recreation are often very generous in that, it's sort of, the management of it kind of goes away, and it may not always be, either, oftentimes their priorities shift on our ask, which is we're very thankful for, but if there's other things that they're tied up with, and Conservation is looking to address that immediately, this is a fund to do that, because right now there aren't any resources to deal with the major trees that we're seeing right now, and trained professionals to take care of these is also a safety priority for us as well.
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support. We observed as we've seen in the other budget areas, there are tree resources in other departments that are focused on particular things. The highway department is focused on trees on highways, recreation on, paths and parks.
Schools.
And schools have some. And following that pattern, having conservation have funds to deal with the things that they can't deal with themselves and have to call out to professionals made sense.
Questions? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This does come up, the issue of tree removal and land management for trees comes up in various settings. And it occurs to me that we should just have one department that has a budget for tree removal and maintenance. And in fact, most of the time, a good part of the time, I would expect they go to a vendor or just go outside. So the issue of immediacy could be taken care of by, even if DPW could do it, they can't get to it for 2 weeks, and that's too long, and you just go right to your outsource, which is what you'd do anyway. So this feels to be like it should be consolidated into one department. I would elect DPW, but so what? And that we get all of these tree management needs put in one place. For rec, conservation, DPW, schools, to name the 4 I know of. And I don't know why we've got it scattered all over the place.
I don't think that you'll have any disagreement on that concept from the administration. I think that...
Or from me.
Yeah.
Well, we got a couple of people on board.
But I just think it's, not insurmountable challenges, but there are jurisdictional challenges there between those those 3 out of 4 of those departments.
Jurisdictional. So in other words, schools would say, well, I need to have it done this way, and DPW wouldn't necessarily look at doing it that way, that sort of thing, or?
And then the, Recreation Commission has certain lands that they manage, and they have certain property that they manage, and they report to a Recreation Commission, so.
Tree removal is tree removal.
You say it so easily.
Yes.
In the subcommittee, we did talk about how a town-wide mechanism might be put in place to sort of get qualified bidders, have some idea about, how much hourly rates or things, sort of the incremental unit cost of getting this work done, to have a common resource that could be called whenever an external resource was to be needed. And even in that context, it was, yes, conservation has to have things done a particular way, heavy equipment can't be used in various places. Each one of the jurisdictions has their own set of rules. The professional companies know how to do that.
Right.
They can be given the criteria and for the jobs. But it's a new infrastructure, so I'm not sure it applies for this budget year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
thank you, Mr. Chair. So just to refine that slightly, the suggestion was if administration could come up with a town-wide on-call contract with outside vendors to deal with these things, and it has all the right parameters that Roger mentioned, then it still makes sense for the individual departments to be able to call upon them within that context. But now we don't have every department negotiating with every tree company to try to figure it out. So it becomes a little more turnkey than is the intent.
But a key question is still, what's the size of the budget? And is it in, line item budgets of the different departments? Or is it a single budget that has to be bigger? This particular mechanism here and in rec has it as a warrant article. So the funds carry over from year to year. They can be, extended or replaced as needed. And it doesn't create, bumps in the budget cycle when nature has a big storm and, we have to deal with it. So as you can tell, there are many aspects to evening out this expense and management.
Any other questions? Ed?
Thank you, Chair. Frank mentioned tree removal, and I just have to question it because I'm very aware of many fallen trees in at least 400 acres of woods that I frequent in Burlington. And I think felling a tree is not that expensive. Removing the tree is very expensive. And if you have trees falling in the woods, why do you need to call Marquis Tree Service to
That's good. Do you mind if I just answer that? You're absolutely right. If a tree falls in the woods, I'm just going to leave it there.
Okay.
I'm talking about the trees that are leaning over trails where people are walking. Would it be all right if I just walk that one up to you just to show you? Sure. Is that all right?
Sure. We'll pass it around.
It's a dangerous leaner.
I probably biked under it last week, yeah.
That one's going to cost about $2,500 just to take down and leave right there.
Somebody ripped you out.
Leave in place.
I'll do it.
I got an axe. But,
I got a colony of termites.
yes, I would just say, drive a hard bargain and we'll take care of this.
Any other questions? Comments? Motion?
Move to approve?
Second?
A motion and second for Article 3-4 Conservation Hazard Mitigation Program for $25,000 from free cash. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
No.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 12-1-0.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Article 17, 4th of July celebration. think we're going to postpone that until next week so that we have better backup and better information in the interest of time.
Town Hall 1 did discuss it
Yeah.
with Nick today. We have recommended some adjustments, which he's taken under consideration, so expect to see some backup. You haven't seen backup yet. We saw the backup today, and we'll be getting that, and we'll discuss next week.
Excellent. So probably need a motion to postpone.
So moved.
Cheyenne? Cheyenne, it's a vote to postpone the vote on the 4th of July celebration money until next week. Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld? Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Grasso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. As of now, it's 12-0-0.
Yeah, well, hopefully you get that back up soon, early
Yeah.
next week.
So we can
So you
look
have
at
a
it.
little more time, and it will be different.
Recreation Department, come on down. Grab a chair, Kelly, if you want to pull up.
Back here, thank you.
You're just going to hide in the back?
Sure am.
Make faces at Brenda?
Need to come up here.
Okay.
Hello.
How are you?
Great. First article, 3-17, Recreation, Simonds Park Renovation and Improvement Design. $200,000 from free cash. You want to tell us about it?
Sure. So we were looking for, this year in our capital plan was the replacement of the Simonds Park Playground, wading pool, and in conversations with town administration and from our past learning with the Overlook project, the design portion of the project is something that should come first. And so the funds for design are what this article is. And it is for the replacement of the playground, which is approximately 27 years old now. It is still probably the most popular playground in town, but it is 27 years old and showing serious signs of wear and tear. The wading pool needs some refurbishment work, and we'd look to add some spray features in there. We have a lot of people that say, we wish we had spray features, and we have a lot of people that say, we love the wading pool. So this is an option to do both. And then we're also looking at a redesign of the bathroom building. So this year, we are seeking funds to design the playground. We do have a conceptual plan of the playground and a conceptual budget that was done during our outdoor facility master plan, and we asked for an update of the budget. Those figures probably 2 months ago are, low at this point, but the funds do include all of those items. We have provided an update on wading pool costs that I don't think were in there initially, and this would be for design services.
So what is the amount that we're actually voting on?
$200,000.
Subcommittee.
Yeah, subcommittee voted 2-0 to support. We elicited a few more details in the estimates, and we're satisfied with the collective result. Since this is just design work, it will end up producing bid-ready documents and a real estimate as to final cost, which will have to be completely voted on, evaluated separately.
Questions?
Approximately how much would the new playground cost?
Right now, the playground, wading pool, bathrooms is estimated right around $4 million. I don't think the bathrooms were included because we're trying to research what type of bathroom facility we would put in. Would it be, a precast brought in and set onto a pad with the plumbing already there, which would be removing the building that's there. But we are talking about approximately $4 million, and it will be a fully accessible playground.
Excuse me, once.
The meeting is frozen, so we have to
log in and log out.
All right, here's our Myrna minute. Let's see.
I'm getting no notes at all.
Well, that's probably why we couldn't get Cheyenne.
Everyone stand up and stretch.
Okay.
Stretch out.
I'm gonna break it. I was gonna do this at 9. It happened
You
early.
said something about Myrna.
Record every day.
What'd you say?
No. Yeah, it's
Yeah, I see it as time versus counting.
Can you X out and then we'll?
No, it's not. I don't see. Yeah, I think it was. There was.
Oh, Patrick will take care of it.
No,
IT says pull the plug,
Right, kick
put
it.
it back in.
but pulling the plug on the screen won't do it.
That's the next one.
Hold the power button down.
Funds for a new system.
We need a warrant article for this room.
Oh, we can go home?
I'll put in my commercial message, example 1 of why remote meetings at town meeting is a bad idea.
How are you? Good to see you.
Yeah, holding it down.
Good? That's good. That didn't do it, David.
I didn't see
Oh, he was holding you off, huh?
Okay.
I know.
Three
kids.
They finally took the sign down that you were tired.
I guess that's.
Have everybody back
Finally took
online
down the
except for
sign
the
that you were
room.
tired. I go to the Y and
I told him to take it down.
go to the Y, and when I come back, go home, I see it every time.
Yeah. I think it flew off at one point. I think it just flew into the woods, to be honest with you. But, yeah. I'm working a little bit.
So you enjoying your retirement?
I am.
Meg, can you hear me?
What are you doing?
I'm working for Sullivan's a little bit. Sullivan's Funeral Home.
Huh?
Well, I got my shoulder operated on. Got my shoulder.
So just for those online, I'll tell you that the computer in the room is frozen.
5 months.
So we're restarting.
Yeah, I got a new knee
Be
last
back
month.
with you as soon as
How's
possible.
that going?
It hurts.
Yeah.
It's getting there.
No, the shoulders, this was tough. This was a tough one.
It's a great advertisement.
Had to be done.
So if I didn't get the new knee.
We gotta start over.
Oh,
I just rolled over.
I had to do it.
nothing important in there.
July 18th. I'm gonna make it fine. I wanna be able to.
We're almost back. We're almost back.
Turn on a TV.
No penguins.
You just look around the room. Doctor.
I could probably do it now, but I probably don't.
Freezers like this?
Yeah.
September.
We've had a bunch.
Go
Really?
beach from Saturday. Try food.
Oh, yeah, but it didn't never froze this badly.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, it's so with his problem is our end to his end. Yeah, no technology in this end wave here.
She asked us how much money we'd give her, and I said, okay, this is about.
Oh, so close.
Powered by
That's more money than I thought you would give.
now putting windows.
Okay, we'll take it.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's because,
The operating systems belong.
that's because the TV is Android. The PC is behind.
Where's the PC?
It's behind, it's bolted on the
Oh,
back.
there's actually a PC hooked up there. That's what I was wondering. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
All right. David, would you tap unmute?
She's not inviting.
Thank you. All right, we're back. Sorry about that. Let's move on. So we are at,
There are friends.
where were we in our
I think
discussion?
Brendan was describing the contents of the approximately $4 million to rebuild Simonds.
Right.
Yes,
We were talking
and-
about bathrooms.
Yep, so the bathrooms, I apologize, the bathrooms are included, they weren't included in the original one, but when it was updated, they did include $375,000 for precast. We were looking at different options, but the wading pool information was not included in here, which is what we provided, so I just want to clarify that. So again, this is for design
for a renovation of the Simonds Park Playground. And as Roger stated, it does include up to bid documents. So we're hoping that if this passes, that next year at town meeting, we'll have a good idea of funds, and we'll be seeking the renovation there of the bathrooms, waiting pool, and playground. And it would have to be done, obviously, in phases. It wouldn't be done in the summer when we see the most people up there. Probably be done end of the summer, fall, starting in that time frame.
Okay.
Rob, still have a question?
Rob?
Any new spectacular features that we can look forward to?
Well, the playground will be fully accessible. It will be utilizing the different grades that are up there in the ledge. It will have a preschool aged area, school age, and then a teen area as well. We'll have everything will be poured in place, so we'll be getting rid of the wood fiber, which is not really accessible. We'll have a pavilion inside, a small pavilion, shade pavilion, and a walking path around the perimeter, inside the fence, but around the perimeter of the area. Potentially some small, couple little spray features inside the playground area as well, and going in the same area overlooking the wading pool. Cool features, bathroom, we are looking at self-cleaning bathrooms that after every 20 flushes, the doors shut, the water, it sprays water across the floor, and then air dries it into a drain. So it is something we're looking at. The closest one to us is Albany, New York, but it's what's coming. It will help us with keeping the bathrooms clean all the time, because our staff works until 3:30 every day, and they work on the weekends cleaning bathrooms, so we're hoping that's something that would be feasible and would help.
Okay.
Chris?
So in the design process, is there any opportunities for community feedback, or have you gathered community feedback for this?
We have not yet. We would seek community feedback. It is, Simonds Park is the, showcase park in town, and we know a lot went into the last playground there. So we'd definitely be seeking community input.
Yeah, spend a lot of time there myself. I would make a suggestion of making a kids competition out of it in one of your many great events of have the kids draw what they think the playground, because you could get some cool ideas, but also more talk about a potential new playground, knowing that this is not going to be something that's cheap, but also well valued in town.
Thank you.
David?
Is the trust making any commitment on this, or?
They will as we move forward, not with the design.
No, but
right now, but
the build out.
Yes, I'm sure they will contribute similar to how they did with the treehouse. They have to go to the Attorney General to take beyond what the trust laws allow them to give. If they wanted to, let's just say $500,000, they have to go through the Attorney General's office to get permission to do that. So we looked at it for the treehouse, but it's a lengthy process, and not sure they want to take a big chunk like that. They'd like to see the funds last for a long, long time.
Roger.
I think I'll make a pitch for fiscal responsibility here, and when you're doing the design work, take into account, how much money there actually will be to build a park, and make sure that there are options so you can value engineer the result to hit some target, and not just build the best park you can think of. They need to be very responsible, and this is a big ticket item. Not the biggest we've ever seen, but it's big, and I agree, it's an incredible resource. So it's worth investing in, but there's always a balance.
Any other questions? We have a motion.
Move to approve?
Second.
Cheyenne? I'm sorry, we have a motion and a second for Article 3-17 from the Recreation Department for Simonds Park Recreation and Improvement Design, $200,000 from free cash. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell.
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
Yes.
John Eiler.
Yes.
Deb McCarthy.
Yes.
Frank Monaco.
Yes.
Steve Moran.
Yes.
Rob Neufeld.
Yes.
Ed Parsons.
Yes.
Rick Rosso.
Yes.
Roger Riggs.
Yes.
David Tate.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 1300. Article 3-18, Recreation Athletic Field Improvements.
Yes. This is the third year for this request. It allows us to make improvements, both accessible improvements to getting people to the athletic fields, updating our athletic fields, and allowing us to add some new athletic fields into our fertilization program to get them started that we haven't been able to do in the past. Projects completed in this past year in FY26. We renovated the softball field at Center School, increasing it, making it more playable for adult leagues. We were running out of space at Marvin and Rotary. Rotary Field, we had the brush removed from the outfield fence and a few feet beyond that was starting to pull the fence down. Marvin Field, same thing, brush along South Bedford Street that was starting to encroach onto the field. We had a zone in the irrigation system that I think staff that worked here 8-10 years ago knew where it was. They're gone. We had an issue with the zone itself. We couldn't find the control box. We were able to locate that and make some repairs. Regan Park, we repaired the backstop fencing, along third base, those type of things. Wildwood Park irrigation. So future projects, this year what we're looking at is installing roofs on some of the baseball dugouts and softball dugouts at Simonds, renovating the Rohannes Park volleyball court athletic area, replacing safety netting at Marvin and up at Simonds, and irrigation system repairs across the town. We had an irrigation assessment done, so now we have a plan of action to standardize all of the valves, the heads, the nozzles, and then the backflow systems on some of them as well.
Subcommittee.
Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
Questions?
So, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's this email that came out, and so for 318, it's, additional information. So this is what we're talking about, is 3-18, right?
Yes.
That's 200,000. So these numbers that are on here are your estimates of all the different things you're trying to do that'll fit in that 200,000?
Correct.
Is that correct?
They add up to 113.
Yeah, I figured somebody would add it up. I was trying to do it in my head here, and I didn't quite get there. Okay. And is there any priority to these, just for kicks? This is what you're going to try to get done in one fiscal year, the 3-18?
Yes.
Right.
And potentially more if we can.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm sure you've got an endless list, right? I mean, you can dip into, well, anyway, that's irrelevant. But I'm just curious, and the thing that's worrying me, to be honest, it isn't just this, but these are pretty heavy loads that we're digging into the free cash, and so I'm just testing a little bit the priorities of any of these in this $200,000 slug. Is there anything that sticks out as lower priority or very high priority in your mind? Like new outfield fence at Rotary Field, 10 grand.
Yep. I mean, we got through last season with it. If we had to knock that off and pick something else, we could do that. But for the adult softball players, chasing balls that bounce through holes in the fence or under the fence, they're all, they're really all important. A lot of these have been left undone for years and years, and standardizing the irrigation systems, and we hope to see some cost savings in water and repairs that
Yeah, well-
they haven't been upgraded for.
Okay, I understand. And on the irrigation equipment, so what's the regulation during drought on using the irrigation equipment? Do you have free rein because it's town property or what?
At some point, there was a I can't think of the word, but the athletic fields are allowed to be watered. There's an exception.
So you're in the exception area?
What we do, we dial them all back to very minimum. They only run in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
The only ones we keep going are ones that we're permitting, because if we're not making them safe and we're permitting, our liability.
And if this irrigation system worked, it would entail new control boxes and smart heads, that sort of thing?
Correct.
So are you familiar with the kinds of systems where they actually go online, they look at the weather reports?
Yep.
They actually do a 48-hour prediction?
The clock, yes, all the clocks would have that, yes, and we would be able to control it from our cell phones.
You're looking at that kind of system?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Anybody else?
Chris? Did you have a question?
Chris, I'm sorry.
So I think, it's helpful to see that, but I think it's just great to have the costs in the future, because I think it's important for people to know how expensive these projects really are now, that they're not just, putting a couple pieces of wire, that there's labor, the costs have all gone up. So I think just in the future, these are really important for those of us that remember the field study and how expensive all of those projects are. And, we're ticking them off as they go, but this is for some of the smaller hanging fruit. No, we still have a lot to do on those. I just think that would be great to keep that information.
Anyone else? Do we have a motion?
Move to approve?
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve Article 3-18, athletic field improvements, $200,000 from free cash. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Nyler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. 13-0-0. Article 3-19, Recreation Fencing, Walkway, and Tree Replacement Program for $50,000 from free cash.
Yes, this was also, this is the second year of this request. It allows us to begin to make improvements to walkways that lead into playgrounds, to into parks in general, making them accessible, and fencing repairs. We have fencing that's, 30, 40. The fencing, perimeter fencing at Overlook was done probably 50 years ago, 60 years ago, when it was a Nike missile site. So making repairs to some of those as trees come down, having to make repairs, the fence along the back of the Town Hall Annex that divides the road there on the strip. I don't know how that ever came into play. I've asked former directors and staff, and they don't remember, but we were looked at to repair it, to fix it. It wasn't ever in our budget. So those type of fences. And then tree work, we talked with Eileen with Conservation earlier. We help them if we can, if there's a dangerous tree, but we have trees in our parks. Last August, 2 large trees came down on the common, and, it was bigger than our team could handle. So we had to call in a vendor to do it. So that's what this money would be used for. There's no, $16,000 for each, or $15,000 for each one. It's, we try to come up with a list of projects that we need to tackle, and then leave some in there for emergencies as well. So last year, we did a number of good things. We did accessible walkways at Wildwood, at Wildmere. We did fencing at Wildmere Park as well, and at Francis Wyman along Mill Street, replace the fencing there. And then trees at Wildmere on the town common, as I mentioned, we planted some trees with that as well. If we're taking down, we like to replace, or if they fall down, we like to replace. So this year, we are planning, working hopefully with the Disability Access to do the walkway from Liberty Ave into Wildwood Park at the backside, Regan Park out to Wing Terrace, TRW, an accessible route from the parking lot where we have an accessible spot into the park, into the playground, and then fencing at Veterans Park. The perimeter fence on Wilmington Road is starting to fall, and then Pathwoods, the perimeter fence there, the same thing. And then there's some fence repair at Francis Wyman Elementary School as well.
Subcommittee,
Subcommittee voted 2-0 to support.
questions? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned Overlook. You actually doing part of this is going to do something at Overlook?
I was giving that as a reference of how old some of the fences that we deal with are.
That's all being picked up in the renovation of Overlook, right?
Yes, there's fencing out in the woods on the, that is. Yeah.
I won't ask.
Yeah, that borders Littlesbrook and.
Oh,
yeah.
conservation.
Yeah, but the old perimeter fence that the government put up is out there still, but that's not, we're only doing perimeter fence along the neighborhoods.
Thank you.
Replacing stockade that was there, that we had put up.
Deb?
The Wildwood Park walkway from Liberty, so is that gonna be like going from the street, like through people's yards? Or?
There's an access point there now. There was a walkway. It's crumbling. Some of it's paved, some of it's not. We clean up the crumbling sections yearly, multiple times a year. So it's a regular walking path. We've had calls from neighbors about replacing it. And it's not accessible from the street. There's a large incline, so what we would be doing is making it accessible and then paving the entire thing.
Questions? Anybody else? Chris?
Just trying to remember historically, and this is probably more for our committee, but when this, because, I think we continue to struggle with the idea of trees in this, but I remember the schools had asked for money for emergency trees, and I can't remember precisely how we voted on that, but I remember us having discussion on that and trying to figure out a centralized place for where some of these happen.
Yeah, I think, my memory is we approved it, and I think the challenge for all of these groups is, like the schools, they want to be able to call somebody today because there's a tree hanging over the parking lot or over a sidewalk where the kids are going to walk when whatever. And everybody seems to have those kinds of emergent. I think Frank's right. Eventually, we've got to come up with some kind of larger tree program and people can access it. It'll be prioritized.
Yep.
If it's a trail or if it's a playground or, the pathway into the school, whatever it is, those are all pretty obvious. So maybe the town can work on that this year. The money's probably appropriate for all of the three to be combined, or 4 or 5, or however many they are. We're probably to a point where we could have a really skilled tree person as an employee and start to save money.
Take that FTE back.
Yeah, take that FTE back, I know, but maybe an existing FTE could change.
So that was going to be my ask to administration is, can we look over the course of the year and see from the various budgets how much money we really are spending on cutting trees? Does it make sense? Again, we understand if there's a tree that's fallen on a school property and we're trying to open school, yes, we need that done. But is this something that should be under DPW that could be able to do it? And we, because we keep saying who owns what, and there's always going to be, well, is it rec, is it school, is it whatever? And I think we need to say, as a town, if it needs to get done, let's get it done, and look at how much this is really costing us rather than making some guesses here and there.
I do think we all use 1 or 2, my memory is the same vendors.
Yeah, I remember that from the last time.
Yeah, so we're not going out to bid. Yeah.
there are obviously overlapping issues between sort of budget amounts and jurisdiction. A big comment about thinking that we should staff it in-house. If you need a bucket truck or a crane, which is used in very large trees, that's outside of any capital thing that we could reuse effectively over time. So there's always going to have to be some outsourcing for sizes that we can't deal with.
Sure. Anybody else?
I got one more question.
Yes, sir.
So how do you keep track of, the fence and the walkway and its condition and its lifetime? Recently, the town facility department decided to invest in money to, I don't remember the name of the system the school uses, but there's an online system that keeps track of assets, and they're labeled, and they've got lifetimes and priorities. Does REC have some system for keeping track of all the things of which you are responsible for?
The short answer is no, but we identify them as we go out and do yearly walks, weekly walks, sometimes monthly, when we're out in the parks, and we make notes, and we hold those for when we sit down and do our planning. And but we find out about things that we weren't aware of all the time, or someone says, hey, can you help with this? Because no one knows whose jurisdiction it really is. So there's not a master list for that.
Do you have a reporting system that's common?
No, it's something we should definitely do.
That was one of the other things that DPW got as part of this deal, was a systematic reporting system and some responsibility for people to triage the reports.
Yep. Wonder if that's something we could access, if they have it.
It's got license fees and training and other stuff, but I think it's worth investigating.
So we are looking at software that would do that, Productive Parks, where all of our staff would have the ability to put the app on their phone while they're out working. If they notice a tree that is fallen, hung up in another tree that needs to be, it can go in there, and then we can triage out of that. It does pop up as an emergency so that the supervisor, whoever that would be, would know and can take action on it. So there is software we are looking at. We don't have anything currently.
Thank you.
Compare with the town first to make sure, because it sounded like they had a lot of the same.
Schools both are using the same system, so that would be a good one to check.
Do you have a point?
No, that was it, sorry.
Anything else? Cheyenne.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just, if we're only budgeting $50,000 for the service, it might be cheaper just to do it, outsourced rather than do it in-house. There are a lot of associated costs, not just labor, but materials and equipment and that kind of thing as well. So if we're only, using this service a couple times a year.
You could use the money any way you want.
I think the point, Cheyenne, is that a lot of this money would be to pay those vendors.
Right. What I'm saying is it would just be cheaper to pay those vendors rather than have someone, a full-time employee.
But
that's right.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we agree. Right. Any other?
Move to approve?
Second.
A motion and a second for Article 3-19, fencing, walkway, and tree replacement program, $50,000 from free cash. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 1300. Article 3-20, recreation maintenance equipment replacement, $60,000 from free cash.
So we had two items in our capital plan to replace this year. One is our UTV. It's our work cart that is housed at Simonds Park. It Currently, it's a Bobcat model, and it's used at Simonds Park, but all of our special events on the town common, it's brought over for that. And at times, we bring it out to parks we tow it out to parks to allow us a smaller footprint when we're towing equipment on the fields, whether it's in the towing a spreader. You can't tow any of our heavier equipment, but to allow us to get out earlier or later in the year when the turf is more fragile. So we're looking to replace that. And then there is a sidearm mower to allow us to maintain fence lines, perimeter fence lines. So we don't have to call in a tree company to help us keep the brush from encroaching on the outfield of softball fields and baseball fields. This piece of equipment will allow us to go up over the fence. It fits different machinery than the DPW. I think they have one coming up for their sidewalk machines. This would fit our John Deere tractor and was the recommendation of John Deere. They do not make one themselves. They gave us the equipment that they would recommend that fits our tractor. They were put together into one, I think, article to maybe make it easier at town meeting, but it does consist of those two items. So we'd be replacing a Bobcat UTV, and we would be purchasing a new sidearm attachment for our tractor.
Subcommittee?
2-0 in favor?
Chris?
So I think my question doesn't necessarily come so much from this, but, and I am really appreciating the fiscal year, like, projections, but next year you have 225,000 projected. Is there any explanation and foresight? Because I think the consistency is great, but if we're also potentially considering a $4 million playground, just thinking ahead.
It is next year is replacement of our large area mower, and I'm gonna, John Deere, in the John Deere tractor. Oh, yes, sorry, it is in the description there, I believe, on the front. Sorry, it's in the front up in the description. But yes, it is our small John Deere tractor and a 14, 16-foot mower.
Okay, thank you.
Roger.
Last year, I recall we replaced a large mower with 2 smaller mowers.
Yes.
Is that technique not still effective economically or operationally? Do you still need another big mower?
We probably won't go
I'm not getting
to
into next year's budget, so maybe I should put that off. But
Yep. They've been working great. They're very versatile. I can't say right now that we would go to a third. We probably will, but having the large mower too, sometimes to go out and just take the large expanse, like miter, for instance, it's just a big place to cut. You know, having a little bit larger mower makes it a little easier, but the feedback from last season to the beginning of this season is the 12-foot zero turns are really easy to run, but also efficient. There's not that big turning radius, so right now that's what's in there. I believe with another full season under our belt, we'll be probably looking at a 12-foot again.
All right, that's next year, but anyway.
Yep.
Thank you.
Anything else about this year? Motion?
So moved.
Second?
Motion is second for Article 3-20, rec maintenance equipment replacement, $60,000 from free cash. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 13-0-0. Article 3-21, renovate and repurpose ceramics room, $50,000 from free cash.
So it is called the ceramics room, but because that's mainly what took place in that room for a very long time. Pre-COVID, we started to see numbers really dropping in our ceramics program. We used to offer a couple of night adult classes, senior classes, and youth classes, and they were dwindling quickly. COVID came, they completely dwindled. We were bringing ceramics to people's houses during COVID, dropping them at their door. They'd paint them, we'd take them back, glaze them, fire them. But after COVID, our instructor left, and we only had a few people in class. So we've been utilizing the room for a number of activities, mostly artsy, arts and crafts type activities that were messy. What we haven't been able to do is operate our cooking classes, which were gaining popularity. We have a small staff galley kitchen that's long, probably 20 feet long, and you can get a person at a counter and someone squeezing by them. So we've been looking for a place to hold cooking classes again. So we're looking at the ceramics room. We have a back sectioned off area, and I think there's a map included now on the in the backup that went out, and I think that's where we have 4 kilns now. So the electrical components are all in there. We'd be removing the kilns. There's cabinets down both sides of the room and shelving, getting rid of all of that. Installing a center or a countertop that looks into the kitchen, refrigerator, double door refrigerator, double commercial ovens, cooktop in a center island where we can teach cooking classes from, but the room would be able to be broken down and still used for other things, Dungeons and Dragons. We had, actually we had Conservation was over helping us today, running a seed class, making seed bombs, and so the room is still used by all kinds of different things, chess, but we needed an area for our cooking classes that we haven't really been able to offer. Our therapeutic rec program also does cooking classes as well. That was a big part of their programming, but we stopped doing it because the other kitchen wasn't safe. So we got an estimate to renovate that room, and then we included pricing for their estimates for commercial equipment, and then we would take our old kitchen and make that storage, get all of our storage cabinets out of our function room and have one storage closet that serves both function rooms. So we'd take apart our old kitchen. We'd have more space in our function rooms, a flex space and kitchen space in what we call the ceramics room, and then create a new storage area as well.
Subcommittee.
2-0 in favor?
Questions? Deb?
In removing the kilns, like, I don't know, are there like potentially hazardous materials that you have to be aware of, and any kind of like sort of
Yeah. Not that we're ever aware of. Not that we are aware of. The kilns would be put on, would be determined or
is there like
called
any
surplus.
that has to be done by anybody post?
No, not that are around inside the kilns. They're enclosed. They would go as a whole unit. They would be declared surplus, put out on municipal bid. So anything around it, it's walls, solid walls. There's no asbestos coatings inside the kilns. I don't know the material inside the kilns, but if it was asbestos, our instructor would have let us know and would not have touched them, and we wouldn't be using them either.
And one other question on the backup, like it looks like the cost of the remodel is about $20,000-ish, and I know there's typically like a 15% contingency, so that gets you up to like 32, 33. What's the remaining amount for?
The estimate for the remodel of the room, which was the demo and rebuild, was $27,500. We have about $12,000 in commercial cooktop, double oven, refrigerator, microwave, those type of things. Gets us up to approximately $39,000. And then, going out to bid, we're going to have to go out to bid. There is some built in there, but we also are going to renovate the old kitchen, removing the cabinets and, cleaning up the walls.
Rick?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So how often do you envision, or how many cooking classes do you envision the utilization of this kitchen? Like how often would it be utilized? And is there a demand? I mean, do you know that there's a demand for cooking classes? Yes, we used to run some really full youth, this would be for youth all the way through seniors. We would run on weekends, spectacular, sorry, was the bake 'em and take 'em classes. Seasonally, we stopped doing that because we're setting up the room and having little stations where there was no really baking. We stopped baking. It was trying to do pre-made stuff and send them home. Our therapeutic rec program, part of their programming on Thursday nights, they had a cooking program. We stopped doing that because we don't have the space to do it. And that was full with 15 participants in the therapeutic rec program. Our youth programs had 20 in it consistently. And then we've had calls for classes for adults that we just aren't able to do. I envision 2 to 3 days a week, seasonally, doing some type of cooking, but the room would also be used, for all kinds of other activities. We have chess in there, we have Dungeons and Dragons in there, we have workshops in there, people rent the room for meetings. We just need a kitchen area. And by removing the cabinets and walls, we're gaining space so we can hold some smaller fitness classes in there as well. The kitchen area is separated. There's a block wall that separates, I think when it was a school, I think it was the shower room. It's a tile floor with a drain in the old, 70s, 80s block, the smooth rounded block that separate it, cutting that in half and putting a counter on that so you could teach from in the kitchen and out to the room. So it can be flexible space for us. Thank you.
Anybody else? Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could you just give me a little geography? Where is this building?
This is in the human service building. So,
all right, that takes
I'll stop
that.
there.
So there used to be a ceramics class at Overlook Park. That building's gone?
Yes.
Right, okay. And so ceramics is going away altogether?
Yes.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Motion?
Approve?
Second.
So a motion and a second to approve Article 3-21, renovate and repurpose the ceramics room, $50,000 from free cash. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Frank Monaco?
Yes?
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 13-0-0. Will of Marshall Simonds accepting $100,000. That's gone up a little. Is that true, 100,000?
Yes,
Yeah.
we were very surprised as well. It's averaged between high 60s and low 80s, and this year they came out with the number of 100,000. We presented, the way it works is we present projects to them in March. They ask us questions, and then they go off and deliberate and choose the projects that they'd like to see. We have not heard yet. I expect to hear shortly. This goes for the first reading at May town meeting. It requires 2 readings and second in September. They like to support programming that takes place in the park, special events, and some public art as well, and scholarships for programs that take place at the park. So we gave them a hearty mix of a little bit of everything. They really like contributing to the park and to the community. They don't want to be the sole provider of maintenance and equipment for the park.
Sure.
So we're very thankful for the trust. Our colleagues in other communities are jealous that we have a trust that helps contribute to such a wonderful park.
Sure. Subcommittee?
Subcommittee voted 2-0 to appreciate the trust's
I'm shocked.
support.
Any discussion?
Second.
Surely not. expecting the answer
Motion to
no.
approve receiving money.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve the first reading of the will of Marshall Simonds to accept $100,000. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy? Frank Monaco?
Yes?
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Yes.
Ed Parsons? Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 1300. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for all your time. Appreciate it.
Gonna be
Thanks, guys.
busy.
All right.
Put a quick plug in for the sidewalks on the town common. They look great.
They do.
We're very, very happy.
They do look great.
Yeah, they-
Good.
Mr. Chairman,
Thank you.
I have to leave.
Okay.
This is about as much as I could do in one day.
Okay.
My first day out.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks.
I'll try not to call your name. But the silence will remind me. Okay. Patrick, are you here for the duration? Are you here for? You sure? Okay.
See how he feels later.
Shawsheen?
Just dead tired.
So we have budget line 301, Shawsheen Technical School.
You can bring it up, Chair.
This was postponed from 2 weeks ago. It is $3,906,349. And this is over on the raise and appropriate side. So we have had one meeting already and some spirited debate. We've had quite a bit of work between meetings trying to gather questions and send to you guys, these great folks, and gather the answers and try to make them make sense to all of us. So I'd like to start, this has been quite an undertaking, so I want to thank you, our subcommittee, and our school committee representatives, Kent, and I just went totally blank.
Stacy.
Stacy. I'm so sorry,
It's okay.
Stacy.
It's okay.
And Tony and your staff, we appreciate. It's not pleasant, and it hasn't been easy, I know that. Chris Campbell, thank you for bringing this to our attention early, just saying, hey, you might want to start paying attention. Very helpful. And then special thanks to Deb McCarthy, John Eiler, and Ed Parsons, who have spent a lot of time on this, just trying to make it make sense so that tonight will go more smoothly. So it's a tough issue. It's important that we get it right. It's hard. It's important for us that we hold the school to the hard work that has to be done, and to keep the trust of the sending communities, because I think that's one of the things, and that's what we're trying to develop and build. As we head into this, I'll just let you know that I've had suggestions from individual members that we should not approve the budget. I've had suggestions about various symbolic cuts that we should include in some amended number. And so those can be promoted as we want during the discussion. I will say that this decision it needs to be our decision of what's best for Burlington, but we're not alone. Other towns are struggling, and they're kind of having the same struggle with what the right answer might be. I want to talk about briefly what the impact of a no vote. Obviously, we're just recommending to town meeting, so our vote means nothing after town meeting takes a vote. So to approve this budget, you need 2/3 of the sending towns. So that's 4 out of 5 towns need to approve the budget as proposed. An amended amount is considered a non-approval, be the same as if we voted no. If 2 towns do not approve, the school has to come back with a revised budget, and that will require special town meetings to approve a final budget. And if 1 town does not approve, the budget passes, and all towns, regardless of their vote, will be billed according to that budget that was proposed and passed. So that's where we stand. At this time, I'd like to turn it over to Ed because he's done the majority of the work in trying to organize everyone's thoughts and the different questions and answers that came through. And we'll give him a minute to run through it. I think the discussion primarily is among the committee, and then asking and getting feedback and giving feedback is kind of, because you guys have been great answering the questions. So Ed,
Thank
please.
you. I can't promise a minute, but I'll take several. As you know, there are many questions about the budget as presented and things that didn't make sense or added up. So I will summarize my computational efforts, summarize some of the Q&A we had, discussions that I had with other finance committees. I provided you all the report to try to summarize that and coalesce our thoughts. I also presented that to other finance committees at the other 4 sending communities. I had hoped to coalesce around a budget approval with some conditions so that we could make sure that our financial systems were on the right track, but it is very difficult to coordinate, and I think, as Doug mentioned, we're kind of on our own making a decision that sets us in the right direction. So first, I was able to import the whole budget from the presentation document and work through it. And there were errors, there were QC issues, and I think I'll just summarize and say that I think it was prepared by non-financial professionals, which makes a whole lot of sense because you're without a business manager right now. I think it's very difficult to accept something that has some errors, but I would say I have a moderate degree of confidence that you have assembled with your department heads a list of the monies you need and requested the appropriate amount from the communities. I think we could move ahead and the school could operate. But I have a lot of concerns about the integrity of your financial systems and your resources to tend to them in the future. And I know you're working on that. The most concerning thing that really kind of set us off on the wild goose chase is that there were assertions made last year and this year about the total amount that the budget had increased, which were just not correct. And I just worry about presenting a budget that just is not backed up by a good top-level understanding of how that fits in and how that will affect the sending communities. And then there are some structural issues with how the capital is mixed in with the operating that makes it difficult to interpret the presentation as is when there are certain errors interspersed. So then I went back on the DESI website and assembled the last 14 years of cost per student from all 5 communities that send students to Shawsheen, as well as Shawsheen's cost per student. And the average cost from the 5 communities track exactly the Shawsheen's costs. So there's not a big issue there until we get to the last 2 years where we saw budget increases that were a little higher than expected. I can't really tell you the origin of those. That's the problem, because I think with more robust systems, we would be able to dig into that and see if there were issues, if this was just a delayed effect of inflation that bears in particular on a technical school in a way that it wouldn't other schools. We'd like to help both our communities and the Shawsheen school, and that's difficult when you don't have a business manager and have some deficiencies. Finally, I looked at the E&D certifications, and obviously we had a real issue at the end of FY '24, where $986,000 of funds were impaired. There were certain reconciliations and adjustments made by the state, and it's concerning that those weren't known to the Shawsheen financial management beforehand. I'd like to just read my report executive summary into the record. because we owe this to our town meeting and our community. And here it is. Shawsheen Valley Regional Vocational Technical District, made up of Bedford, Billerica, Burlington, Tewksbury, and Wilmington, recently submitted its FY27 budget to the finance committees of those towns to be voted on by the committees and then each town's town meeting. An FY24 audit showed significant deficiencies in Shawsheen's cash reconciliations and monitoring of the operational budget. The FY26 and 27 budget proposals both contained obvious errors and incorrectly asserted a 2.9 and 1.7% increase respectively, when there were both 6 to 7% higher totals than the previous year's budgets in each case. A report by TMS Solutions in December of 2025 reported deficiencies in budget management, reporting use of revolving accounts, among other accounting and management insufficiencies. The latest DLS certification of excess and deficiencies made $986,000 of adjustments, which require reconciliation. While Shawsheen has taken steps towards improving these issues, there is much work left to do before finance committees can be confident in financial controls and accounting reports. The timing is unfortunate, as Shawsheen is currently asking for towns to fund a $1.5 million feasibility study for a new high school building, which will most likely cost taxpayers hundreds of millions of dollars. So in summary, I would recommend that the 5 town finance committees establish a plan and mechanism to enable a more appropriate level of oversight for financial control and management at Shawsheen, which may include attendance at financial committees by finance committees representatives at school committee meetings. Shawsheen administration should provide monthly budget reports and funds balances to the finance committees representatives, as well as the school committee, as we get on track. As soon as possible, Shawsheen should hire a qualified business manager, and then finally, Shawsheen's administration should complete and report out a reconciliation of all funds and accounts, so that we know our status. And I believe that there are lingering problems that may have been there for decades, and I think it's just too late to hesitate here. And I do believe that you comprehend the need to do all that, and it's been difficult to get started. And I think we have a responsibility, though, to just insist that before we see another budget, all of these things get done. So with regards to the other finance committees, there were questions last time when we met about how other committees regarded this. They really had the same concerns that we did. They were concerned about having a budget document and reports that made sense. They were worried about having proper financial control and accounting SOPs, very worried about the cash balances, and really making sure that we understood what funds were impaired. And I'll mention that it was the intent to pay from E&D funds for the feasibility study, and now we need to pledge that money because the E&D funds are not free. We don't know what might have happened in FY25, and we are most of the way through FY26. So there's just considerable uncertainty at this point, as much as we'd like to believe there will be much more certainty in the future. We did receive an explanation of the steps that have been taken by TM Solutions, who's been hired as your temporary business manager. That's a good narrative. We'd really like to see hard data on SOPs that have been implemented. We did not receive that, and I'm not sure how much progress has been made at implementing financial processes that can ensure control going forward. We have heard about potentially a haircut that has been considered, not just by us. I have found that getting engagement on that is very difficult. It would be very difficult to coordinate. And in any case, that would risk most likely that we end up voting no on budgets and coming back and having considerable trouble and special town meetings to get this done. to fund the Shawsheen School. And then finally, I have my thoughts on this, which is that I believe that Shawsheen can operate. I believe Shawsheen is of vital importance to our communities, and we need to give them a way to operate, and while insisting on cleaning up the financial management, which has been a need for a while. And so I think there's a difference between how I shall vote as a town meeting member and how I have to vote as a finance committee member. As a town meeting member, we need this school to operate. But as a town meeting member, I have to take a bit of a gamble. I have to trust that we're going to move forward and hire a business manager and things are going to clean up. And I'd like to help in that process. Alternatively, as a town meeting member, if we vote no, then we're risking all sorts of effort and trouble and further money with special town meetings and budget redux. So that's a tough and different decision. As a finance committee member, I have to hold this budget request to the same standard I would any other budget request. And I want to see assurance that there is a financial management structure in place to manage this. And so, and that's where I struggle. So you guys have seen more detail in my report, hopefully, and we discuss now. Thank you.
Questions, comments? John?
Surprisingly, I have a few. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Like Ed, I really appreciate it. I know you guys are putting a lot of time into this, and I know it's pretty annoying to do. Both Ed and TMS Solutions, who's the interim business manager, found a large number of financial issues, I think is fair to say. As Ed mentioned, the FY25 year-end E&D is still not certified. We're 10 months after the fiscal year end. I just want to emphasize it's not a normal delay. Burlington, for instance, gets its free cash certified. Got certified in September, typically is certified by end of October at the latest. So more like 4 months is sort of a typical thing. So the fact that that's still out raises some real, it suggests that there's some real red flags at the state that they're trying to work through still. So I'm personally not optimistic about how that's going to turn out. And just in general, we've been exchanging a lot of emails internally and working with you folks and with a subgroup here in the last 3 weeks, one of which I understand was a vacation week. But in general, I'd have to say I'm more alarmed than I was when we met on this 3 weeks ago, as opposed to reassured by things. I'll pull out a couple. Here's sort of maybe highlights of concerns I have, and then I'll have a proposal. So obviously the E&D is one. As Ed mentioned, I'm sorry, let me just drill down a little bit. The FY25 E&D certification that came out, which is for the end of FY24 basically. One line item in there was particularly big that I haven't heard an explanation for, was $574K of cash variance. So Deb may know better, but that phrase cash variance strikes me as basically the assets don't line up with where you think they should be. And that's a pretty major red flag in my mind. And not having an explanation for that still 10 months after you've received the report suggests it's not an easy explanation. A lot of things come to mind that could explain that, and all of them are alarming. So that still being out there is a real problem. With the operating procedures, again, you've had TMS in there, you've had 10 months at least since you've seen this pretty alarming E&D result. And, we requested to see improved SOPs that would describe spending authorities, authorizations, how spending is done. And that, we haven't seen that despite requesting that, which leads me to believe that you don't have them yet. And that's pretty alarming also. That's something that could be worked on in parallel while the accounting is being straightened out, is let's get our procedures in place. And then finally, the TMS report gave a good list of, it's basically the only thing that's approaching a financial recovery plan right now. But it's not really a plan. What it really is, it's a list of issues and ongoing activities related to those issues by TMS. What I would be looking for in terms of a recovery plan would be something with well-defined deliverables, which I didn't see in there. It would have all the needs, because there's definitely things that aren't described in there that should be. It should have very specific dates with deadlines, whereas all the things in there either have vague deadlines like spring or no deadlines at all. And it would have well-defined responsible parties, which also isn't in there. So the point of that is that there's really no financial recovery plan that's documented right now that we've been made aware of. And again, you've had 10 months to work on it, and it still hasn't happened. So I'm going to forestall any argument that says we're in the middle of this, it'll take a year to straighten out. Almost a year's gone by, and there's a lot of these things that could be happening that haven't happened. So that's very troubling to me. So the proposal I would have is something that alluded to, which is I do think that there needs to be, even if it's a relatively small amount, there needs to be a haircut here to send a message. And so what I'm going to propose is that, and I'll make a motion on this after I give the reasoning, is that the overall assessment be reduced by $27,500, which is the difference between what's listed in last year's report and this year's report for the superintendent's compensation. So I think it's, and I want to make it clear that this is not a message to say we think you should be fired, because I don't think that's the case. But it is a message to say that when you're running a $45 million operation and you have significant compensation, maybe a raise isn't appropriate when we have this kind of financial difficulties going on in terms of tracking what's going on. And I understand that may imply a renegotiation of a contract. It may be that the school committee decides that's not where they want to make the cut and they find somewhere else. It's not a huge amount that's going to hurt the children. It's a very measured response. I think just saying yes to the budget is not appropriate for us. As Doug pointed out, it obviously does count as a no in terms of, if the town meeting were to vote this way to a reduced number, it would count as a no. But I do want to dispute something that I think Doug and Ed were implying. The thing that regulates how the votes work in terms of approving a regional school budget is Mass General Law. And looking at the MGL that covers this, the requirement is that 2/3, which in our case is 4 towns, have to agree to the budget that the school committee has approved by their 2/3 vote. There's no requirement on the order of how those votes happen. So if town meeting were to approve a budget that is this incrementally smaller number, and the school committee were to later approve that same number, we will have voted to approve the budget before the deadline set in the MGL to agree to the budget that they approved. So there is no requirement on what that order is. Now, naturally, the order typically is the school committee has a number and the town vote on it rather than the other way around. But there's no requirement for that order. So it would be very reasonable for us to, as both finance committee and town meeting, to vote on this reduced number. And if perhaps in talking with the other committees, if the towns were generally approving that number and the school committee were later to approve that number, there would be no need for an additional town meeting to vote after the school committee. So I just wanted to clear that up. So again, it does give a very clear message without causing unreasonable financial hardship on Shawsheen. I absolutely agree it's essential the school keeps operating. We're not trying to shut it down. We're not trying to chop $10 million out of the budget so you guys can't get things done. But I do think that's an important message to send. So I did make a spreadsheet just to figure out and I'm almost done. I did make a spreadsheet to figure out the apportionment. It was able to reproduce the current apportionment. If the total apportionment is reduced by $27,500, that would change our apportionment from the current $3,906,349 to be a new number of $3,903,307. So I make a motion that we amend the amount to...
Can we have some other discussion before we start changing things?
I'll hold off on that motion until we have the discussion.
Sure.
Mr. Chair, just again, yesterday morning, I did respond to that. So I did respond and explain that the cash variance is due to the fact that accounts were not being reconciled on a regular basis. We addressed that in the spring. We've also hired and brought on a district treasurer who is currently working through not only last year's stuff, but also this year's stuff to make sure that we are on track. So I did respond to that. It was sent back to Mr. Parsons, Mr. Campbell, Mr. Davison, Mr. Eiler, Ms. McCarthy.
It was distributed to the whole committee.
Yeah.
It went to everyone.
Again, I'm not trying to split hairs, but we did respond to that.
So, if I may, I saw that response. It gives a qualitative description. It doesn't give a quantitative description. So the words are, I understand them, but I don't see any math that adds up to here's where the 500,000 where it went, the 574,000 where it went. That's what an explanation would actually be.
And honestly, I don't have that documentation.
And I understand you're not there yet.
Yep.
But the fact that you're not there yet is, part of the alarming data.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone else? Roger? You wanted more discussion. You want to lead it? Do we have anybody else? Frank?
I'm sorry.
No,
All right. Well, you've been more involved in this if you want to speak first.
No, go ahead.
All right, so I just want to be clear on the mechanics of any reduction at all. And so what you're proposing is to take it from a specific area of a salary increase, but in general, it's just a reduction to the budget, because that's how it works. So any reduction at all is mechanically would be a no vote. But what you're suggesting is the school committee, or the proponent, I'm not sure if it's the committee or the district as a whole, could reduce their own budget, which would match the reduction that we approved, and everybody could go along with that. And so you've sent the message, but you'd have not blocked approval of a budget. That's kind of where you're headed.
Everyone goes to that same number.
Right.
They have their yeses.
Right, and the logic behind that is, there's something wrong here. As a group of finance committees, we're looking to get the remedies in place before we just approve whatever you ask for. Here's is a course of action we're taking to kind of hold on to our position of there's something wrong here, but we don't want to kill the budget by any means. So I think that's what you're doing. All right. So, in my mind, the only way this ever gets straightened out is to get all of the right personnel on board. Apparently, you've got one person on board now, the treasurer, as a permanent hire, but you don't have a business manager yet.
We're interviewing this week. Yep.
Okay, so, that's remedy number one, and until that capability person mechanism is in place, there's no way to really actually get where you're trying to go. You just don't have the capacity. That's number one. Number two, reporting out on a monthly basis expenditures against budget is crucial until you get a period of time where you know that your processes that are tracking and the budget that you've got and the expenses that you're doing are really matching up, and it's reportedly matching up. It's going to be a while before you can get that. I would guess it would take a year's worth of effort to actually get where we need you to be.
We did implement that for this current year. So every month at the school committee meeting, the school committee gets that updated budget.
We're just getting rolling on that.
Yep.
So those are the two things that, in my mind, if you could get your monthly numbers to start to check and balance, then you know a lot about your processes. And if you've got a business manager that's on top of all of that, he can work with you, then you now have the skill sets in place and things will really start to get better. So I guess what I think, John, I don't know, sending the message, I guess, makes sense, because for us to just say, yeah, we're fine with the $3,906,000, no problem, is really not, it's really irresponsible for us to do that. You know there's a problem, we know there's a problem, and we know it can be fixed. We absolutely are certain that this can be straightened out, and you're making progress, but you've got a ways to go. So what I want to see is a budget approved with requirements against it and of getting people on board and getting the monthly reports that are trackable in place. I would say, by mid-fiscal year, so by January, you want all of that stuff up and running. And I'd like to see that as a checkpoint to corroborate that we've done the right thing by approving any budget, and that you're not getting deeper in the hole. Or you're not getting out of the hole. Because what happened is, obviously, there's an unknown source of expenditures that weren't tracked, and so those holes had to get filled up with unencumbered free cash, which you had to dig up somewhere. And everybody knows that you can't do that very many times before the proverbial crap really hits the fan. And we don't even know if some of that isn't happening already, which was your point about we don't really know what the resolution of the overruns really are, if there are any last year, what the resolution is. So we're really in a bind. I don't know if you can orchestrate this haircut that everybody signs up for and a budget gets approved. But if you can't, then what we've done is, at least as a party of one, potentially got in the way of approving the budget. And if we are a party of one, it won't have done any good anyway, because the budget will pass from the other four. My tendency would be to try to get assurances of the right remedies are actually in place on the timeline, and we have a mechanism, if that doesn't happen, to start to slow down expenses, which is the equivalent of incremental haircuts, because you can't be spending money you haven't got. You easily could overrun your free cash. So we just don't know. So I would lean towards a mid-year check with a penalty of clawbacks start to happen if you can't demonstrate that your run rates are going to match your budget and that you've got personnel in place who can take full responsibility with the skill sets to do it in place and, and able to speak to it.
I'm not confident that can happen.
Well,
it's a bottom line, it's the same as the school committee. You can't,
There's
we can't.
no clawback mechanism.
Well,
it's a bottom line number. I mean, that's.
Yeah, I mean, not
You
to,
could
not,
approve a half year number.
not to jump in here, but like, you gotta remember, a new business manager coming on is an integral part, but you gotta remember, that's a massive runway to basically, so there's been other remedy, like Tony said, last night's meeting, we talked about a district treasurer. That's separating out the segregation of duties of the bank and the accounting stuff, so that's a huge step towards, like, the committee will get consistent reports, on like the trust stuff, all our investments, like all that would be reported. So
Actual budget.
Yeah, cash, like there's, within Munis, there's like a cash program, we talked about doing that, but, I mean, even a mid-year check, you're talking, like, I agree with you on insurances, but it's a long runway for things that we have to do. Like, another thing is our external auditor. Me and Mr. Parsons talked about a common one, and I kind of touched upon that's an integral part, but we're gonna have to probably break in a new auditor if that's what we decide to do. So a lot of this stuff is all happening at once, so it's a lot of stuff to have to manage. There's been other stuff tossed around, like, basically bringing in a more, advanced consultant to do, like, that's something we potentially do, maybe to do a, retroactive, like, reconciliation on top of, like, doing, best policies and procedures, and maybe even be available to kind of spearhead and take that off the business manager, because that's something you don't want to have to, because they're coming in and having to learn and revamp and do that, and on top of it, have to manage it. It's just a lot. So I think it's like, so I don't really agree with it. 27, I mean, it's also like, to the point of, you're going to pay consultants to come in, you're taking 27K away from to potentially, allocate that money to be put out. So if you're looking to hire the appropriate staff and do all that, like, there has been steps that have been made in that direction. So, I mean, like the district treasurer is a big one. I think hopefully getting in a, auditor that doesn't take over the two that we reviewed and go through. So it's just, it's a lot of stuff at once. And I mean, business manager will be a big step towards that, but I think that's, like anybody going into a new job, I mean, that's a big, learning curve. It's going to take time to get them up to speed, and hopefully with experience. But I mean, you get the right skill set and somebody that has experience in some of these areas. But, just like anybody, you could have two companies do the exact same thing. If you go over, every company does things differently. Like, we don't do the same things that the Minuteman does it, or we, so it's going to be, it's a lot of stuff to take in.
Dave.
Just curious, have you spoken to the other finance committees, and where are town approvals with the other 5 districts, and it just in general, where that all sits?
Well,
I don't know when town meetings are on the other.
right,
towns.
so
Bedford's already voted to approve both the budget and the feasibility study at town meeting, so Bedford's town meeting is done.
right, Wilmington and Bedford have voted to approve.
The finance committee.
The finance committee, I'm sorry, to recommend, yes. Billerica and Tewksbury have both voted against approval, to recommend that it be voted no, and obviously we're still out there. We'll talk about the feasibility, I think, in a minute, but
Wilmington's town meeting is this coming Saturday. Tewksbury starts next Monday. We'll go Monday, Wednesday, and wherever. Currently, I believe Billerica's is scheduled to start next Thursday, but I know they have an emergency meeting tomorrow night to talk about changing the night of their, and then Burlington's starts the following Monday. So we have a busy couple of weeks coming up.
Chris.
So, I mean, I think we know this, but I'm just going to reiterate, what we're doing here is a recommendation to town meeting. And as we know, town meeting takes our recommendations seriously, but they don't always agree. And what we need to do as a financial institution here is say, where is our non-negotiables? And I think for the most part, we do a really good job of holding budgets to account. And when we see these things, calling them out. And so when this started to come up, my first thing that I thought back to is, well, when something somewhat similar happened with Burlington Public Schools and there was a deficit, what did we do? and how did we respond to that? And what were some of the things that we put in place and asked for as a town committee, a town meeting, and as a financial institution to rectify those things? And then how do we learn from those things? And I think that's kind of some of the important things that I see in these recommendations of not just things that we want, but also support throughout the process for looking for some long-lasting change. And I think it's important for us to be able to say in this budget process, yes, we care for the students that are at Shawsheen. We know the importance of Shawsheen, but in the same sense, we have to be those stewards of the finances as the sending institution here and say, where is the money going? How are we accounting for it? And I do think it's important for us to be able to say in a statement here of the things that need to change. I think there are steps to change, but I think we have concerns over a plan to change. And that if this was 6 months into the future, great. I think we would have a lot more confidence, but we don't. And I hope 6 months from now, we will. Some of the things that we've already discussed as changes for next year based off of this process is typically the subcommittee has, generally waited until late March. And we've already discussed we're going to move up that process much earlier, like that we do with the Burlington Public Schools, of meeting after the superintendent's budget comes out before it goes to school committee, so that we can have insight and input and conversations on where the budget is before then school committee, and then have another one after that, so that we are much more involved in the process. We are much more connected to other financial committees, ways and means for our neighboring districts than we have in the past. We have a much better relationship with our school committee members. We've actively been participating and communicating, getting great resolve and questions back and forth. And I think that is something that we haven't necessarily utilized a lot in the past in ways that we're doing now. But I do think this is an important moment for us, being able to say, there is a problem, we see a problem, what are we going to do about that problem?
That's kind of the question, what do you want to do?
I would say one of my concerns, and I share John's feeling, I really left the last meeting thinking we just need a couple of weeks and then we're going to be able, it's going to make sense. And it doesn't make sense yet, and that's a concern. Another concern, how many school committee members do you have?
10.
I'm not confident, after watching your meetings, that you will have a majority of school members that will agree to spend the money to do what needs to be done. I don't know that you can get support for a forensic audit. I don't know that you can get support.
I voiced that the last.
I heard you.
And I
heard you, and I also heard members of your committee say things like, we may or we may not have a problem. I believe there were things said that were shocking, that make me more concerned that we're just not yet to the point of pain that 6 out of your 10 members understand or are willing to do what needs to be done. That's concerning. Yeah. The things, and I would encourage you all, the things that I heard from board members were concerning. It's much more anger toward the finance committees than saying, wow, we really do have a problem. You're right. You said some of these things go back a decade or decades. And some people kind of shook their head, yes. Well, those people have been there. So this isn't a last year problem. This isn't we had a new business manager who wasn't any good. This is a long-standing, and I'm not even, that's not even just Shawsheen. Burlington ran into the same thing. We had a long-standing business manager who, whatever the bizarre way he ran the finances, it worked for him, but it didn't really work. And so it came to light. But there was a forensic audit. There were people that were really on top of it and panicked about it. And I don't have confidence. I do in the two of you, but I don't have confidence that you have a majority of board members that will support the money to do the right thing. If you came back and asked for more money with an outline of, we need to hire Powers and Sullivan or whatever they're called now, and we need to hire, and we need to do this, I'd feel better about supporting your budget that was higher if it had the right steps in it that we know by this time next year we're really going to be close, headed in the right direction.
I think people will come around to that. I think like basically the point I made last night's meeting was, you know, if you have to pull money away from other things to apply that, it's, you got to do what you got to do. So I mean, if that's based.
I heard your point.
Yeah, so I think
just
that-
didn't hear a rousing support.
Yeah, I saw that same meeting, and Ken, I do want to commend you. You were sounding very rational and had excellent suggestions. But like Doug said, I didn't see everyone nodding yes by any means. In fact, I didn't really hear much support at all for a lot of what you were saying. And that's why I think this little extra nudge of a message may help drive that home a little bit more. You know, I think the wrong message to take away, you know, here's the thing I don't want the school committee here despite all the pain. Is I don't want to hear.
If you're trying to take away, if you're trying to say that's counterintuitive. So if you're saying basically like you want us to go out and spend this money on consultants, but then you're turning around and you're penalizing 27. So if we go and we do get approval and we do say what you're saying is basically we get more active interest, we'll use your words, then if we get more money and we say this is the cost and we do get that support, that $27,000 is less money that we then have to find to then to put towards a consultant.
And I would
So guess
say two things. I've given you one place where to save the money, and I understand if that isn't where you want to do it, and that's perfectly fine. And the bottom line is it's a fairly small amount of money. I don't think it's going to break the bank on any plan that you have, which is why the intent was to keep it a fairly small amount. And I would even agree with Doug. If you guys came back mid-year and said, we actually have a well-defined get well plan for our fiscal situation here, and unfortunately it's going to cost an extra $250K, I'd vote for that warrant article if you had a very well-defined plan.
I don't think we're allowed to do that under MGL. I think we have one bite at the apple.
Okay, I haven't seen anything one way or the other on that, so I can't say. But I'm going to go out on a limb and guess there's some way that we could get money to use to fund that. I don't know what it is, but I got to believe there's a way to do that. You know, just like, you know, if at the end of the year you guys came up short and needed money, I'm sure there's a way that you could go back to the towns and get that money. You're not going to, you know, go into bankruptcy because of it. So I think there's probably some mechanism that we can work out to make that happen. So if that really becomes the issue, then I'd be all for supporting, as Doug said, an actual well-defined plan.
Well, I think that's what we proposed. I mean, we did put out, like I had proposed in doing an internal audit.
Well, you said a lot of great things.
We won't mention the firm. I'm not going to get into the.
Yeah, that's fine.
Ed knows what. Not that one, but I think to Tony's point, you have to put out a 30B, and there was a framework put in place back out, and we only got one bid. But I think that can be scoped out basically to expand upon. I'm not saying that's exactly, but I think there is a framework to do that, and we could sit down and talk about that and figure out what the cost is. And I think that's something that you could have a consultant come in. I'm not saying that, but we'd have to scope it out as a committee.
But I think the point is you need to actually have that financial recovery plan that I talked about in place first. And then we'd be happy to back it.
But to rebut that point, there has been, I understand your points, I don't disagree, but I mean, there has been things done that people need to like basically acknowledge. I mean, the district treasurer was a huge thing to get in and basically separate those segregation of duties. There's like, you know, unfortunately, the external audit of what we had was not the way, but we're going to put that out to bid. So there has been progress on things made in the whole financial realm, not just budget. They're all tied to each other. But I agree with you. I think that that's something we'll scope out and look to do and do as a committee and, you know, come up with that plan. But I mean, that's got to require put out, like sit down as a committee, figure out what needs to be done.
And I agree, by the way, that you have done some important things. Like, it's great you got the treasurer now. It's great that you brought TMS in. But I don't want to say it's ad hoc, but unless you have a well-defined plan that says, here are the milestones, you know, like, when do you plan to have SOPs in place? Is there a date? You know, I don't know of one, right? When do you plan to have that 574K figured out? You've got to have well-defined milestones, dates, and who's going to do it. That's what a plan is. Until that's there, it feels kind of ad hoc that the school committee is looking at, okay, we know we need a treasurer, let's work on that today. Okay, we need this. And they're probably all good things to do, but there needs to be an actual plan as opposed to here's what we're thinking today we need to do. I mean, at your next school committee meeting, what are your targets of what you're going to try to accomplish, right? I mean, it's not there. I think everyone probably has an idea of, yeah, we understand we need to address various things and so on. But without this well-defined plan with milestones, dates, and responsible parties, there's no way to track it. You know, if it doesn't happen, and you've already said, and I agree, you're right, it's going to take a long time to sort this out. But if we're here 6 months from now and X hasn't happened, is the response going to be, well, we knew it would take a long time? Or is it going to be, well, it was always on our schedule that it's going to take 7 months, you're going to see that in 1 month? There's no expectation of when anything happens here other than eventually.
If you put it out to bid, you would get that back from a consultant. I think that's when we do that, that's the plan, we'd have to do planning and figure that out. That would be presented to the towns to say that, beyond just what TMS had put out. I think that's something we have said, and I told both Ed and Doug that, and I think we're committed to doing that and making those changes. So I think that's a good faith effort, and I get your point about the ad hoc stuff, but it's not really, those aren't really what I would classify as ad hoc. I agree there needs to be a more organized plan, but like, as you watch the meeting, a lot of this stuff is years in the making. So it's like, I disagree with the way you're categorizing as saying they're ad hoc, because they're not really ad hoc. These are key things, again, maybe not all sequentially, but those are, like the district treasurer is something we've been talking about for a while. Even you're for TMS, and that's a big thing of separating, you know, things like to Tony's point about separating the accounting piece from the bank stuff. So that will help with the E&P and all that. And these are things that, so, you know,
Okay, well, I think we both made our points on this, and so I won't belabor it, but.
Can I just make, again, this is just the way my mind works, Mr. Eiler. So from a logistical standpoint, the town of Bedford has already voted on the assessment that was in this book. Does that mean that we now have to go back to them and ask them to re-vote? Wilmington's Finance Committee has already voted to support the numbers that are in this budget book. Their meeting is Saturday. I don't think it's realistic to have their Finance Committee come back and approve a different number. Tewksbury met last night, or Monday night, excuse me. I'm sorry, I'm mixing up my days at this point in time. Met Monday night. Again, they didn't support moving that forward. It didn't support it at town meeting, but their town meeting starts Monday night. So
yeah,
from a logistics standpoint.
Logistically, I think it's very tough. I agree, and I think we really, if we were to vote a haircut, I think we have to acknowledge it's the same as voting no. It's recommending to town meeting that it's a no. I think that's part of what I laid out. I think that from a strategic standpoint, if we were the only town that, if town meeting listens to us, if we were to recommend no and vote no, if we're the only town, then we're going to get a bill for our portion that's based on the budget, not our haircut. But we will have already put in place a raise and appropriate for everything but the haircut, and we can add that in September. So in that sense, mechanically, that's better for us. We don't have to have a town meeting. If two towns vote no, then we're doing this show anyway.
Exactly. I don't think operationally it makes a difference. And just an aside, it's like a $3,000 difference to Burlington. So, even if we didn't vote for it, I'm sure we'll find a way to come up with the $3,000 to cover the gap. So I don't think that's going to be the issue. I think it's an open question of, if towns vote for a larger number, in other words, the current one, and we were to vote for this lower number, and the school committee were to come back with a lower number, I think it's a fair question as to whether the towns that vote for a larger number, if that would count as a yes.
They'd probably have to raise and appropriate.
It seems like that would count as a yes. I don't know precisely if it would, but if they voted for a larger number, I gotta believe that would be yes. So I don't see where it would require another town meeting to make this happen. I agree, it's not, the nice,
them, right.
it's not the nice, trivial process, but again, I sort of what Frank says, I don't see how we just say we have all these concerns and don't adjust it.
To me, the horror show of, if 2 towns vote no, you guys have to go back to the drawing board. The positive of that is, I think you come back with a little different budget, and it would show monies outlined for a forensic audit, for a consultant, to get your SOPs and to, this is how we're going to do it and this is how we're going to pay for it. So in that sense, I think you come back with a much more structured program. But it would require towns to have emergency or special towns.
That's what I'm saying, I don't think it does.
No, I'm saying if
2 communities voted down.
Right. I don't think it's realistic that everybody's going to.
Well, no, I think if let's take, for example, if we voted for this lower number and one other town just flat out votes no with no number, if you come back with that same lower number, our vote essentially becomes a yes, and then you're all set.
That's
new
not
town.
my interpretation of the way that MGL is written.
There's nothing in MGL that says the order of events that has to occur. It gives a deadline when the towns must approve it by, which is 45 days after your amended budget. It doesn't say we have to vote after you amend the budget.
Yes, you can sit on it for 45 days and it becomes automatic approval.
No, I'm saying it doesn't say we have to vote after you amend your budget. It just says we have to vote with it before 45 days after you amend your budget. If we vote actually before you amend your budget and it matches your number, that meets the law. I've got it right in front of me here.
Ed.
Thank you. And again, that's not the way I read it, but
I understand because it's not the normal operation,
So I want to agree that what we need is to spend more money, not less. We need to sweep in, fix the problems, move on. I think if we're arguing these technical details, we're already going down the wrong road. What I want to see, the purpose of this discussion is to just wake people up to the fact that it's time to act. And what we have here is a governance issue. It's just way too easy to say, well, I said my piece, and we'll hire a business manager, but it's easiest to do that, in the summer, so we'll wait until then. We don't have that time anymore, and I'm very heartened that we have gotten to the point where it's time for Kent to raise his voice and cuss a lot in a school committee meeting. But we need to go a couple steps beyond that. We need to galvanize,
There's no F's, oh yeah.
Another 8 school committee members to say we're not here anymore to talk about why this is inconvenient or why this hurts, because it's been traumatic to go, from meeting to meeting and, hear all these complaints. We just have to galvanize around the problem and the solution. And you're not going to get a lot of resumes for business manager unless you raise the offer. And I think that has happened this process, as opposed to a few years ago when you're going to get more candidates. We only got 1 bid. That's a problem. So don't take that bid, solve it. There are 5 town managers or administrators and 5 finance committees that want this to be resolved. We will find a way to get somebody in there. I don't know how to navigate the public bidding process, but somebody does. I need assurance that everyone is galvanized around solutions. We're going to find a way, and we're going to make this right. And Frank is absolutely right. January is when you start putting together the budget that we have to see next time, and it's got to look better. And we really have to have all these solutions in place and operating by then.
Yeah, you don't have as much time as you would like. Roger?
Part of me gets really annoyed, but, so, I think this symbolic haircut is useless and unnecessary drama. I mean, I'm trying to get John and Ed's point about we need the drama to get the action, but it feels to me like it's a distraction from the actual work that has to get done. And I didn't watch the Shawsheen School Committee, but the thing that I was looking for is that the school committee was going to take this seriously and actually deal with it, because the school committee, your school committee, is responsible for this mess. Right? I mean, we're all outside the process, trying to exert pressure, observations, and light upon this subject, which is too ugly to look at. But I really think the drama of, I mean, I think maybe our finance committee should vote no and the town meeting vote yes. But I think this, well, I already said it, I think this haircut thing is just drama for drama's sake. That's correct. So
Frank? I will really be quick. I just think it could be so incredibly confusing to town meeting if with conviction we report a no vote from Ways and Means, and you expect them to vote. I mean, the first thing they're going to ask is, what does that mean? What are you trying to tell us here? Vote no?
I'm actually expecting a mixed Ways and Means vote, but...
But that's the problem.
Can I be really brief?
Try. I don't know.
I should have responded to the motion we still need to deal with. I also think that the haircut is just kind of cheeky, and I agree with Roger. I think that the only tools we have here are giant hammers, which are insufficient, and so I'm just going to have to stand up and explain to town meeting why we voted no, or some of us voted no, but we want you to vote yes, because we're in the worst. I, as a finance committee member, can't guarantee that this is as well structured and well governed from a financial standpoint as the other things we're asking you to vote for. But we got to take a chance because we got to operate this school because we love this school.
It's an interesting speech, and I think that is what has to happen. That's why, John, the messaging of the haircut is just even more confusing.
It gives them two ways to vote no.
And they have to straighten this out, and in a lot less time than a year or two. I honestly believe that by January, you should be well on your way to having controls and reports that start to reflect, we know what we're doing, we know how we're spending, and we've got a damn good idea about what went wrong and why we fixed it.
I absolutely agree.
But you have to go faster.
Well, I think that's where you lean into, like Ed made the point about, basically leaning into talking to other, I mean, we know what the process will be to put it out to 30B, but you're hoping by expanding out to other resources, town administrators, town managers, other school committees, other superintendents, there's able to come up with a pool. I mean, you still have to go to 30B to put it out to audit, but you're hoping at least you have some resources, knowing the firms when you put a
I am the first person that would have liked to have this resolved 9 months ago.
It's not an option.
We have a
It's not an
part-time
option, trust me.
interim business manager, and it is incredibly difficult to, I mean, again, that is not typically my job and my focus, and I have other responsibilities as well, and trust me.
The state will come down on you like a ton of bricks if in fact the issue of overruns and unresolved controls is still in play.
Yeah. Understood.
They'll have to.
Yep.
Chris?
So I think there's a lot of variables. I think we got a little too in the weeds because we don't know what any of those town meetings are going to do. There can be amendments from the floor. There may not. I think we just need to focus on what we want to recommend here in Burlington. Looking at quick math, I think one thing that would come up is how much might a special town meeting cost? So I went to our town meeting. It's going to look about $4,000. That's for roughly one night. personally, that kind of changed my opinion from a haircut to a no. Because if that is what it may take to get this right, and then we are, yes, costing potentially our town a little bit more money, but to really get a solid budget, I might absolutely consider that. I think there's a lot of us here that also may need to make a vote based off of what we think here, and then the debate at town meeting might change those, and those are okay as well. You know, we're just making this recommendation off of what we have now. They will have 2 more weeks roughly to do more work, and maybe more will come out in those 2 weeks. And maybe they'll be able to show to town meeting more things happen. That's, you know, because we're saying, I don't think they'll get there on the first night. So it's 2 weeks that things could change there as well. But I would say, you know, based off of just thinking of if we even had to risk it in a special town meeting, I would be for that. So.
Is Burlington going to be the last town meeting to vote on this?
Yes, unless Billerica changes their date.
Okay, because 2 of them have already voted.
No, one's already voted. Wilmington is this
Okay.
coming Saturday.
All right.
Tewksbury is next week. Billerica's scheduled to potentially be next week. They're talking about moving it to the 19th.
All right.
What kind of
I don't want to play
votes you're
roulette
expecting?
with schedules. That's,
No, that's where we just have to do what we have.
Yep.
Is this a good time to make a
Ms.
motion?
Worth, today? Yes.
All right, I'm going to make a motion that we amend our amount that we're voting on to $3,903,307, which corresponds to that $27,500 cut across all the communities. That's our portion amount.
I'll second.
You want any more discussion on it? What's that going to accomplish at town meeting?
Well, so here's what,
Mass confusion.
well,
You have to give that speech. Financially, I'm opposed to this from the town's objective of keeping the school running.
yeah, but this schools are going to keep running.
Okay.
I think there's going to need to be a long speech from someone regardless of what we vote.
Right.
Because if we come in with the haircut, we need to explain that and what we think should happen. If we come in saying we like the budget as is, there needs to be a big explanation why we don't like it as
That's
is.
not what we're saying. What we're saying is, this is the budget we're stuck with. There are enough problems here that we are extremely concerned, and we want the remedies to get going. And here are the remedies. He should be presenting his own remedies.
And we can make that, but unfortunately, as mentioned, we only have one big hammer to work with.
Which is what?
Yes or no on the budget. We don't get to say, we'll only vote yes if you do these things, which is what we really want to do, right?
I can assure, all right. I know what I think, but it's not going to help you.
So it's my understanding, if we vote for John's motion, I don't expect that other towns are, I don't think that that's going to all work out to have, maybe it would, but I don't think we'd have 3 other towns vote for that exact number. And then maybe it works with if they modify their budget. But if we vote John's number, that counts as a no. If no other, and if town meeting votes your number, then that's 1 no. If no other town does it, it doesn't matter. And the positive of that I see is that it keeps us from having to have a special town meeting, because we're going to have approved all but $3,000 or whatever it is. And we can make that up in multiple ways, including an article in September. If we vote no, and 4 other towns vote yes, then we would probably have to have a special town meeting, because we're going to be billed for that full amount, and we won't have put it in the budget. So the positive I see of your haircut number is that it supports, it gives us a little insurance in the instance that our town meeting goes along with it and 4 other towns approve the budget. I think there's a likelihood that that's not going to happen. And it's going to mean a lot more work for a lot of people. and then we're going to have a better budget. But
So question to the statement you just said. So if we are, let's say, $3,000 short and we haven't appropriated that, couldn't we pull that from out of the emergency Ways and Means budget?
sure. Yeah, we could do that. We can, because the raise and appropriate, that doesn't actually happen until October, November, December. So we can do a raise and appropriate for $3,000.
So we wouldn't necessarily have to have a special town meeting?
No, we can do it in September. Because we don't actually raise and appropriate till halfway through the year. Deb?
So what happens if John's motion was approved and we vote on it, and it's not, say it's mostly no, do then we revert back to the original budget?
No, what do you mean? If it's, so again, we're recommending to town meeting, but if our town meeting also agreed with John?
No, Deb's asking a different question. If we vote no on the amendment, then we vote on the original budget.
Yes, oh, yeah, yes.
Vote no, so
Cheyenne?
Oh, basically the same question. We voted the original budget.
Right, right. We would just then go to the original motion.
Right, so it is an amendment.
Yes.
Not the motion.
Yes.
Can I say one sentence?
Please.
I think the question before us is whether a budget with a haircut is a better budget. And is that what we want to present to town meeting?
Well, my answer is no, it's not a better budget, but it is a way to vote no.
Yeah, well, we'll make them feel better.
And protect ourselves from having to have a special town meeting.
Yeah, so we want them to vote yes. I'm willing to make the speech that you should vote yes in spite of this and these other reasons, if that's our intent.
My intent is I would be fine if they voted for the haircut.
Yep. Yep.
Anything else? We have a motion and a second, no more discussion. So the motion on the floor is an amendment to change the number $3,906,349 to $3,903,307. Is that the right number?
I'm trying to find it again. I lost it.
Please, let's make sure.
$3,903,307.
Yes.
Yes, right, yep.
So let's vote on the amended number, on the amendment. Cheyenne?
Okay, just to be sure, this is a reduction.
This is Mr. Eiler's amendment to reduce the total amount of the request.
Okay.
So it's about a $3,000 reduction. So what's your vote?
No on the reduction.
Chris Campbell?
Pass. Pass. No, pass, come back.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
No.
Steve Moran?
No.
Rob Neufeld?
You left.
I was not going to call his name.
Promise you wouldn't call on him.
Ed Parsons?
No.
Rick Rosso?
No.
Roger Riggs?
No.
David Tate?
No.
Chris, you got an input yet?
No.
I'm going to vote yes. 380. 380. So the motion fails, so now we go to the original article.
I'll make a motion to pass the original article as written in the book.
Second?
And it's $3,906,349, and that's a raise and appropriate number. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
No.
Chris Delaney?
No.
John Eiler?
No.
Deb McCarthy?
No.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
No.
Ed Parsons?
No.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs,
Yes.
David Tate,
No.
and chair votes no. Quick second, because I had to use the second line. 480 again. So the motion fails. So we have voted to
Not
recommend
recommended town meeting.
a negative vote for town meeting. Moving on, Article 19, Shawsheen Technical School Feasibility Study. This is an article that we passed 2 weeks ago, and in the interim, I have been asked to put it back on the agenda. And so that is what I have done.
I guess I'll make a motion to reconsider.
Second.
So we have a motion to reconsider, which means we'll talk about it again, and
What was the vote the last time?
the vote the last time, I believe, was...
It was 12 to 1.
12 to 1, I think. 12-1-0, I think. Just to make sure, yes, 12-1-0. Okay, so, all those in favor, I'm going to come back and find my...
Well,
This is just the vote to reconsider.
The vote to reconsider, yeah, we're not voting on the motion, it's the vote to reconsider. Cheyenne?
no, right now.
Cheyenne?
Yes. Sorry, yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Adler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes.
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rasso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
No.
David Tate?
No.
Chair votes yes, 10-0, so we'll open this back up for discussion. Mr. Eiler, you
Yes. Thank you, Mr.
made
Chair.
the motion.
So I won't repeat all the stuff from before, but the point of all that is that, I think we've described a fair number of issues. I think the school committee has acknowledged it's going to take a bit of work to sort through this, quite a bit of work, quite a bit of time still. So, given the level of financial issues that we have, I think the wrong thing is to say, we understand that with the $45-ish million budget, you've had some issues managing that, and it's still not under control, but we think that you'll be just fine with this $350 million project for whatever reason. That seems like an odd statement to be making. There could be an argument, well, we'll have it sorted out by the time it becomes important because it takes a while to get through the process. 10 months have gone by already. Yes, some things have happened, but, there's the list of things I described that are still open, including not having an actual formal written plan of how you're going to correct this. So we've already waited the almost a year, and I don't think anyone's saying, thank goodness we had that year, it's all sorted out now. So it's somewhat, well, I'm an optimistic guy, believe it or not. It's pretty optimistic to say this time for sure in 1 year we'll have it sorted out. Trust us, we'll be ready to handle that money. What I think is a better approach is to say, and look, I think the only reason we're having this discussion is that they're in the MSBA, got into the MSBA process, and, darn, we couldn't get into that. So that's obviously a big accomplishment, in terms of the high school. It's hard to give up that burden to him, no doubt about it. And that's the only thing that would cause me any pause whatsoever, quite frankly. Otherwise, I gotta believe people would not hesitate to say, let's wait a year until this stuff is sorted out, and then we'll feel much more comfortable. So So what does it mean to not move forward the feasibility process? All right, it means that we've dropped that bird in the hand for the moment. But on the other side, I think, and obviously there's no guarantees at MSBA, but if I were on the receiving end of an MSBA application that said, we didn't move forward because we had a lot of financial issues, we invested all this effort, time, and money, and we actually got it all sorted out, and we really understand how to manage everything, and look, our E&D came out exactly where we expected, and it lined up. We've really fixed this problem, and now we're ready to manage this much larger process. If I were the MSBA, I'd say, wow, these guys really took a step back, fixed their problem, and we can really trust that this is going to go smoothly. I'd absolutely say we approved it once. Nothing's changed other than they have better financial controls. I would quickly say, let's readmit them to the process. I understand there's no guarantee, but that's a pretty good story that you can tell that I think would get you back into the process. And would impress them, quite frankly. I think there's another common argument that every year it gets more expensive. We've heard that argument all along. We've had the huge jump in construction costs. It's certainly possible they could go up 20% every year, but I don't think that realistically can happen because construction would end up being 200% of GDP if that keeps up. So in any rational economic analysis, construction costs are going to, roughly speaking, return to the norm of going up with inflation and going up with our discount rate. And what does that mean? It means the real cost of it is going to be identical 10 years from now as it is now. If the discount rate is 5% and it goes up 5% every year, the real cost is the same, even if the actual dollars are higher. So it's sort of a false argument to say it's just going to get more and more expensive. In real dollars, it will not get more and more expensive. It will stay the same in any normal situation. So we've seen with VHS, and even Fox Hill, quite frankly, it's pretty hard to get people on board with these big programs in any normal situation like we had here. If you throw in on top of that, don't worry, we'll get the finances squared away before it really matters, I would find it rather remarkable if the electorate at large and town meeting in general bought into that kind of argument, given what we've seen where people don't want to pay 1 penny more in taxes even in a normal situation. And then I think the final straw for me is, I think you guys acknowledge it's going to be a lot of effort to get all this financial stuff squared away. It's going to take a lot of mind share, and it, quite frankly, should be your primary focus other than making sure the school doesn't stop operating. And from what we've seen with both the VHS process and the Fox Hill process, it took a huge amount of the school committee's effort. I mean, they had endless meetings in getting community input, going through different plans, voting on all those things and getting people on board with it, working with select boards and so on. You've got the added headache of dealing with 5 groups of annoying people like us instead of just one. And so it's going to be a huge distraction from getting your financial house in order, to the point where it's not going to happen because you're going to be so focused on making sure the feasibility process goes forward smoothly so that you can get to the next round of actually getting the school funded. And quite frankly, that would be a huge thing. So it's going to be a big enough problem for you to deal with this one thing by itself with the financial situation, that trying to throw in a school building project on top of that, of this magnitude, when we've seen how much effort that takes, I don't see how that is achievable. And that's the reason I wanted to reconsider, is to make sure that people were thinking about that collection of facts before they decide to move forward with the feasibility study. And that's why I would not want to move forward with it. Thanks.
In a minute.
Well, no, that, please.
No, go ahead. Chris, Frank, then we'll.
Well, maybe he wants to speak.
No?
So I came here tonight to speak in favor of keeping the feasibility as somebody who spent 2.5 years on the Burlington High School. And as I've been sitting here, the one thing that, and Mr. Eiler said it very well, comes down to is time. Feasibility studies take a lot of time. And as somebody who's spent on there, knowing what school committee needs to do, and hearing just here tonight of wishing there was more time to fix more of these things, that's not going to happen with a feasibility study and entering into this process and doing it well. And that what we then need to do is then sell it to our town, either through town meeting or through a vote. And if this process isn't started well and then done well through it, I don't have a lot of faith that it will pass. And I want a new Shawsheen. I think they need a new Shawsheen. I think that that's their prime, just like every other tech school, and this is the right way to do it. Unfortunately, I do not think it is right now. And I voted for it originally. I still want it. I just don't think that Shawsheen has the time right now to devote to a feasibility study. You know, it's exciting to be in the MSBA process. I don't think any town wants to give up that money. But the time really needs to be dedicated to getting these finances set and getting everything in order before we then can move on to that. And I would agree. I think this is one of those, we do need to wait and we need to pass on this as a town and then can go back in. We know from Burlington, we can do it a number of times. But I can't ignore some of the things that we learned through the Burlington High School project and wanting to get this right now. And right now is not the right time.
So, yeah.
Go ahead, Doug.
I want to jump on that and then.
Go ahead, you run the meeting, yeah.
Because I think we're coming from truly a place of wanting this to happen. I sat on the Burlington High School committee also, and I can tell you it's heartbreaking to spend all that time and $1.5 million on a feasibility study and then not get anything out of it. I said it to the two of you, and I'm going to say it again. You have to assume that a large number of people in the sending communities are going to vote no because they don't want their taxes to go up one dime. If all of your ducks aren't in a row, you're just giving them the excuse they need so they can tell their neighbors, well, I wanted to vote yes, but I'm going to vote no. Because now we have a reason, and we definitely saw some of that. And we also saw it, and the thing you have to be aware of, I mean, what you're asking is also for money from the commercial property owners. And we certainly saw it with commercial property owners that went behind our backs, that went above us, around us, below us to spread rumors, to talk about how incompetent the building committee was, how incompetent the feasibility study is, how stupid they were. They should have just asked me. I could have done it with a tape measure in my pocket. And it was quite insulting after having spent $1.5 million and had experts say, these are your options. But that's part of what you face. And so you really need to be able to walk in with your ducks in a row. I want to echo what Chris said about the amount of work. And the work was Eric Conti and our business manager. I would say the second most important person in the feasibility study was the business manager. Every month during that feasibility study, we had invoices. They have to get voted, they have to get paid, she wrote the RFPs. The business manager plays a critical role from day one. That even in hiring the owner project manager, which will be your second step after assigning a committee. So I think that if you do a good job on the feasibility study, there's no way you're going to do a good job on doing the stuff that needs to happen to be healthy. That's my personal opinion, but that's that's kind of where, I mean, I voted yes, all of us but John voted yes, but again, I'll say I voted yes, assuming, in over a couple of weeks, it's all going to become clear, and it just hasn't. Frank?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would not get out of line. I would not get out of the MSBA pipeline. I think you have enough time at the beginning of getting the OPM and the architect, and even getting another consulting business person in to manage this. And the problem is an operating budget problem. The problem is not deciding how to build a school or what school to build, or filling out the paperwork or the purchase orders and whatnot. The problem is the processes to manage the operating budget were woefully insufficient, and it wasn't caught. That's what's got to get fixed, and I do not connect it that tightly to engaging in an MSBA process. The first year or two is all about figuring out what you want to build, figuring out what it's going to cost, getting out on the street and getting the project underway. They're years away from building a building and have to worry about managing that kind of detail. Probably 3 or maybe 4. So I would not get out of the MSBA pipeline. I think it's a mistake. And I think, like I tried to say, you need to go faster to get your operating systems in place to manage, to build, and more specifically, to manage your budget. And I think if you really roll your sleeves up, it can go. I don't believe it's going to take as long as some of you think. I don't think this is that hard a problem. I think a good CPA and a good business manager will amaze you. So that I'm going to vote in favor of funding the money to engage MSBA.
Tony?
So,
Thank you.
again, I do not disagree with any of the stuff that has been shared. I get it. Timing matters. To Mr. Campbell's point, to Mr. Eiler's point, the but I'm going to throw out here is MSBA gets 75 to 90 project requests per year. They fund 15 to 20. And I'm sorry, I don't know your last name, sir,
Monaco.
but Mr.
Monaco.
Mr. Monaco. If we get out of line.
John's best buddy.
It's true. If we get out of line, it's probably 5 or 10 years before we're back to this point again.
I don't know.
Using $350 million, which I think is a conservative figure for the size of school and the type of school we're going to rebuild, at 4%, that's a $14 million per year compounding addition every year that it takes us to get back into that pipeline. That's going to add up fast.
And it's still a 60-year-old school. I mean, you saw that with Burlington. I mean, me and my wife did a tour, and I appreciated the firm that did for Burlington High School, because you actually got to see, I forgot what the name of the firm that did it, but you actually got to see all the parts that you don't get to see behind the scenes. And I think that's the type of stuff that you see. It's still a 60-year-old school, and, you know, I mean, Tony could attest to this, there's like HVAC parts that the company's been out of business for 2 decades, that they have to metal fab. And so it's, you know, I agree with Mr. Monaco. I mean, I'm not disagreeing with any of what you're saying, but at the end of the day, like, it is, you're in the, it's easy to say you can
Get right back in line.
You can tell the story of whatever, but I'm going to be honest, I don't think the MSBA really cares about the story. They care about the year over year. I agree with you. It's a story you can tell. But
Here's all I'll say from our experience and from quite a bit of research in towns that have done it both ways. You're right, you get back in line.
Yep.
But if you go through the feasibility process and then lose the community vote and don't build a building,
that's not good.
Your line just got 20 years long. 10 years you'll be begging for. I don't think it'd be 10 because the state knows we need vocational education but I think the only line that's going to get longer is if you go through the process and fail. So the stakes are high. If you choose to go through the process now, you're rolling the dice and you're telling the children that we're willing to risk this. And so that's what I'm saying. I I think you have a better chance of passing the whole thing if you wait. But that's, anybody else? No?
You said it.
Not a new idea, but and there is a lot of staff and administration time is required, but in terms of the finances, managing the finances of the feasibility study, that is a partitionable task, which is kind of what I think Frank mentioned. It can be partitioned from the operational staff. I too will think that the feasibility study should go forward.
Anybody else? Do we have a
Motion to approve the feasibility study.
Second.
So a motion and a second to approve the Shawsheen Technical School feasibility study, Article 19, for $165,737. Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chris Campbell.
No.
Chris Delaney.
No.
John Eiler.
No.
Deb McCarthy. Frank Monaco.
Yes.
Steve Moran.
Yes.
Ed Parsons.
No.
Rick Rosso.
Yes.
Roger Riggs.
Yes.
David Tate.
Yes.
Chair votes no. So that gives us a tie.
That's
In
fitting.
days of old, the chairman could have not voted or voted to break a tie.
That's rude, Doug.
These aren't the days of old, my
They're
friend.
not.
A tie's okay if that's what it is.
And you made
So
the
we've got to call up Bob Newfeld right away.
Yeah.
If only that
It's fine.
makes my
It's not-
second speech a little easier.
It's not binding, we just go to town meeting with the 6 to 6.
Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
probably a good representation of where we are.
It's exactly how we voted. All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Whether you like it or not, we're on your side.
Thank you.
Promise.
My job is to come and advocate for what I think is in the best
That's
interest of the
absolute.
school. Your job is to advocate for what's in the best interest of the community. Completely
Right.
understand.
But our students are part of that community, and we recognize that.
But
More of them will be.
it's also in the best interest of the community to fix problems, and if we can
Absolutely.
help, please reach out to us.
And I just to finalize, I don't think anybody's viewing anything that everybody's in agreement, and it's not combative. I mean, that you can have open dialogue and agree, and I think that's what we're all here is basically for the betterment of Shawsheen. Whether you agree or disagree, but at the end of the day, like you said, you gotta have a budget to approve, and I think there's steps been made, and I agree, there needs to be a financial plan, and I think everybody's committed to that. So I think by you guys being here, us all being here, we're all committed to that. So I think that's the message that needs to be put forth. And I agree with the MSBA, it's all about that process, about how you sell it. That's the,
It's terrifying.
yeah.
I have nightmares.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot. Thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
All right. Reserve fund transfer,
Yes.
fire equipment.
You really know how to
I
enter
don't know,
the
I can't
stress
smell
tank,
what
don't you?
it must not be a problem.
Must not be a problem.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members. Earlier today, you were sent some backup on this that I'm happy to walk through. We were just refining sort of the amounts available in some different areas today. So, brief overview. On April 11th, Burlington Fire Rescue responded to a fire at 40 Wall Street. There was a large shipping container and tractor trailer on fire. So this area is a big area for landscaping equipment, rental, that type of stuff. What happened was the materials that were there that were on fire, and that I think during the extinguishing phase, a lot of rubber material, a lot of potentially hazardous materials, as you can see from some of the pictures that were sent, potentially hazardous based on what it's made of, really damaged and covered the turnout gear of everybody that was there, including some of the most expensive stuff, the self-contained breathing apparatus, which is the packs they wear to get oxygen when they're fighting these fires, as well as helmets and other things like that. These have been washed several times by our staff through not your typical Kenmore washer and dryer, but our industrial cleaners and decontamination machines. Some of the stuff was brand new that was damaged, and based on what we know about potential or risks to carcinogens that are in this type of material and what firefighters use to protect themselves, almost all of the equipment that was there that day was damaged or lost, or is a loss. So some of the photos that we shared with you, the grooves of the hoses where they breathe from, residue and debris that's been cleaned 3 and 4 times still remains. The most expensive item that needs to be replaced, the SCBA packs, which are arguably the most important items that firefighters wear, all significantly damaged. There were 7 lengths of hoses that are all covered in that and then have all been pushed with the cleaner. So, one of the most sort of astounding pictures I've seen is the inside of the turnout gear that's completely damaged. So that has to go through the pants into the internal lining. Definitely a significant event for Burlington Fire. And so we've spent the last couple of weeks working with the chief and assistant chief over there, and the total of the gear that's been damaged totals $117,582, and this is frontline firefighting gear, so it's something that we need to replace pretty quickly or immediately. We've worked with the chief and his staff on utilizing existing funds that we have for this structural firefighting gear, turnout gear replacement, and sort of making some adjustments to who was on that schedule for this year, as well as other available funds to cover nearly 40,000 of that within the operating budget. So we're looking for a reserve fund transfer of $80,000 to cover that. And the balance will be funded through the operating budget. We have begun an insurance claim process through our insurance company, and whether that'll lead to subrogation or other types of claims from there, we don't know. We expect that it will, based on the deductible that we have. Depends on what classification that these equipment finally will fall into. May or may not make it. There will be probably some recovery, but the timing on that obviously cannot be relied upon for replacing this equipment. So respectfully here to ask for your approval of a reserve fund transfer request of $80,000.
Was everybody okay? Any injuries or any
Yes, that was the
possible long-term
impact?
impact?
No, I think minor things that happen at the course of a fire, but no injuries to our personnel.
Okay, great, thanks.
Anybody else?
Obviously, the scuba gear did its job, and they didn't breathe any of that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's the most important part. I mean, you saw that the gear is working based on what some of the damages, but yeah, it did its job.
Great.
Motion to, go ahead, sorry.
Rick?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Were there any code violations that happened as a result of this? I mean, that
Not to our knowledge, it's sort of an industrial zone based on what's going on down there. It's storage of a lot. I think a big piece of it was tires and other sort of flammable things that are part of a, lack of a better term, landscaping yard. So I can't speak to exactly code enforcement measures, but that has not come up.
who would investigate that or respond to something like that within the town?
So the fire was deemed unintentional and accidental, so there's not necessarily an arson investigation that would occur, and there's not like an investigation needed for that purpose. Inspectional services is complaint driven, so if there were things that the fire department saw there that they had concerns about, they would definitely communicate that to the building inspector. which may or may not have happened. I just don't know. Those things sort of happen.
I'm just thinking from a liability standpoint, is there any liability on behalf of the property owner?
I expect that would come up if insurance proceeds to a way that needs to be looked at. But as far as documentation, there's significant scene documentation on our side.
Okay, thanks.
Chris?
I would just, so that was one of my questions, Rick, I'm glad you asked it. I think the other one is just, and this, may just be, this is a one-off fire, this happens, but if not, is there lessons learned? And is there better products out there? If we have to re-spend this money, is there something that is a little better quality that would then help us then not have to do this again?
Yeah, and I think that this fire response is unique based on the materials that were there, but it's a good question based on the sort of evolutions and changes in this type of gear and equipment. It's kind of, we have, in some cases, waited to purchase gear, particularly because of changes in the type of gear. That's mostly the materials that they're using and related potential carcinogens and changes in that. So it is gear that is constantly improving, and I think that I had a conversation with the chief today about the purchases they make based on changes in those materials. So will there be things that would ever get us through something like this? I'm not sure. Even some of to me, just looking at some of the packs, it's like, how come there's a groove there? Because that groove is really making it challenging to clean. And, so there's probably science and engineering and technology way above my head that makes it sense for that. But structural firefighting gear has gone through a big evolution. I think will continue to. So I think that's something that they're very much on top of, particularly the training and communications captain there.
Yeah, and I think my point is just, I get we need to replace it, and that's fine, but if we have to then replace, is this the opportunity to spend just a little bit more for that better product, or a product that will clean better, or that, protects better?
Yeah, I think that we'll definitely communicate that with the chief.
Yeah, it's sort of related to that. I imagine that most of the gear and most of the fires that are fought in Burlington are basically standard construction, residences and commercial buildings. But something like, tires and stuff, is there firefighting gear that's specific to the more hazardous situations? And do we have any?
I think there probably is. I don't know the answer to that. But I think that is probably for very highly specialized certain units of fire rescue that we don't have here, that we don't see on a regular basis.
Thanks. Steve?
Motion to approve.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to approve a reserve fund transfer for the purpose of replacing damaged firefighting equipment for $100,000? No, you know,
$80,000.
Right.
Don't go inflating it.
Contingency.
That's just the standard markup, isn't it?
More of those flashlights. Okay, I'll go back and fix that.
You got to save some money for the shed.
All right. Cheyenne.
Yes.
Chris Campbell.
Yes.
Chris Delaney.
Yes.
John Eiler.
Yes.
Deb McCarthy. Frank Monaco.
Yes.
Steve Moran.
Yes.
Rob Neufeld.
No.
Oh,
Abstain?
Yes.
Maybe.
Ed Parsons.
Yes.
Rick Rosso.
Yes.
Roger Riggs.
Yes.
My eyes are getting blurry. David Tate.
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 12-0-0. Local transportation, $250,000. This is a raise and appropriate. We talked about this briefly 6 months ago at our first meeting. And
Sure. So thank you. We had a long conversation about the program last time, and we wanted to get some feedback from the appropriating, the budget committee on what you felt a good level of resources for this program was. We got some feedback from the policymaking board about what levers they'd like to see used to get within those amount of resources. We talked about it last time that the program has grown exponentially. The last couple of years, as we were spending down a balance in a revolving account, I talked about, we're trying to see what the size of the program, where it's going to level out. It hasn't leveled out. It's really grown even over the last couple of months. We're actually putting immediate changes in place right now in order to be able to close out the year. So where the 250 came from was from feedback from this group and from the select board about what did the town's commitment to the B-line used to be when we had the different program, when we had the B-line, which I think everybody here knows what it is, but for those that don't, it was more of a bus-type system that had a schedule that it went on, and it had dedicated stops, and it would be just like getting on the bus. You went to the stop, you got on the bus, you paid a fare, you traveled around, to a more of a concierge service where folks that qualify could use the Lyft program, and the way it works is we subsidize up to $10 for each ride. Again, this group knows that. So the feedback that we got was that amount of resources was the upper limits. I think there's a push for the program to maybe even change further after this, but that's how we came up with $250,000. We have to have a budget to start this year. What will that provide? We will have to make changes to the program. Our immediate changes will be to change the maximum amount of rides that participants can take in a month. When it was first put in place, the ride limits were 50 rides or 35 rides. That's going to be decreased by 20 on both of those tiers, or at least by 20 on our initial. And we think that if the growth has plateaued, which probably it hasn't, that we can live with that initial change. The other changes that we'll make is within the age requirement. There hasn't been a recommendation to change some of the other requirements, such as a disabled person or a person that's 300% of the federal poverty limit, but those may come at some point also. And then another change that could be, or a lever that could be pulled, would be the amount of the subsidy, just tapering it down from a 10 to something lower than that. So if the program growth continues, then all of those levers will have to be pulled. But I think that the consensus was that $250,000 on the town's appropriation is about the upper limit that folks would like to see for the program. And everybody agrees that it's a great benefit to those that are using it, and some of them need it, have a great need for it, but that the subsidy, so if you picture someone that was going from a 50 ride month to a 30 ride month, their monthly subsidy could be, instead of a maximum of $500, could still be $300, which would be $3,600 a year if they were using it to the max every month. So that's where we came up with that number, and we said we would be back. This was approved by the select board on Monday. So happy to take any questions.
And did we have a subcommittee?
Oh,
Originally we did.
Originally,
Last Tuesday.
yeah, but we never met again.
Right, okay. Questions, discussion?
Maybe just the obvious. I assume that once the year starts, you're going to keep careful track of how it's going and keep cranking things down. So
One of the things we're going to do is we'll do the immediate changes. It'll give us a couple months we'll have everybody recertify. There hasn't been a recertification program, or a recertification requirement for the program. So we'll have everybody go through that. And my guess is some participants that haven't been using it, we have over 450 that are registered for the program, but we don't have 450 users every month.
Okay.
So hopefully there'll be some attrition to that, and we'll be able to continue to track the data and see if there's going to be any changes that need to be made, and be ready to make them during the year.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah.
What was the original number that you had? Was it 250K?
When we first presented the budget?
Yeah.
It was more like I think it was 342.
Okay, all right, so it has been reduced to this number. Okay, that's what I was trying to remember. Thanks.
Chris?
So I'm all for fine tuning this program. I think there just should be a balance between also educating riders of how this can work, because if you're budgeting out yourself for a whole year and really reliant on this, all of a sudden a change halfway through, that could be very detrimental to people who are relying on it outside of those potential categories, other things we just don't know. And I think that would just be an important part of how this kind of works and explaining that this then could happen.
Yeah, we had a lot of conversations with Marge, and we will with the other folks that are also aware that, the catchment group that comes in about outreach, to say, this is what it is now, but.
But I think you can do that in the recertify, like, in that messaging of recertifying, and also here is the program, and here is what can happen.
Yep.
Right.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we only get to vote on the size of the budget, not the,
Changes.
correct, yeah, not any of the qualifications or changes or any of that. And so you wanted input on what we thought on that. So you've limited the maximum number of rides, and the subsidy has not changed?
As of right now, if the current data we have and the rides go down accordingly, we should be able to make it with that. So we're going to initially start with the subsidy being the same, but it will be the next lever. That's.
Which would essentially mean to raise the fare to the individual?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
I mean, I guess it would raise it if we went down to $8, but their regular ride was only $9. It wouldn't be a raise to their, someone that, say someone that uses it for work, and the whole trip only costs $9. They're only covering $1 now, and we're covering $8, but we would cover up to $10. It wouldn't necessarily change every ride, but.
And occasional users aren't really going to notice much different, because they won't be up against the limits.
Right.
Chris?
And I would also ask then at fall town meeting, can we get an update on where we're at on this? If, we recertify and then in the program it's being super successful, and then we may or may not want to make a choice of going up more or not, or the projection was on target.
So this is select board policy, right?
I know it's policy, but the money, we can have a say. So if we are hitting 250,000 by, projected by October, we could consider if we wanted to put more funds in that, potentially.
If they ask for it.
If they ask. So would love an update on where it's at.
Is 250 what we were spending before? And
Yeah, that's.
Was that net? Because we were getting an MBTA.
Yeah, that was our transfer. That was the town's appropriation.
But again, we were getting an MBTA.
We were spending about we were spending 400.
So, and whatever the fares were, so the net was.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Move to approve?
Second.
Motion and a second to approve the local transportation line item, $250,000. It's a raise and appropriate in the operating budget. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes?
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Rob Neufeld?
Keep trying, he's just not coming.
He's going to come back.
Yes.
Rob, your name keeps coming up.
Dragging him through the mud.
Rick Grasso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Fading. All right. So now we got to do minutes. I know we have minutes of April 1st. I got a couple of things and I made those changes. So let's do that one and then we'll figure out what's left. So we have a motion to approve April 1st
So moved.
and a second. Cheyenne?
Yes.
Chris Campbell?
Yes.
Chris Delaney?
Yes.
John Eiler?
Yes.
Deb McCarthy?
Yes.
Frank Monaco?
Yes?
Steve Moran?
Yes.
Ed Parsons?
Yes.
Rick Rosso?
Yes.
Roger Riggs?
Yes.
David Tate?
Yes.
Chair votes yes, 12-0-0. Now, I didn't have time to go back and look. I think I sent out the minutes of 4/8. If I didn't, I just dreamed that I did. No?
Can't even remember.
John doesn't remember, Eiler doesn't remember. and
Yeah,
he
I'm
usually
thinking you
would.
dreamed it.
All right,
I could
I'll
be
send
wrong.
those out. And I believe Meg will have 4:15 very quickly. So we'll do those next time.
Can I request that we have a deep dive in all the reports from all the subcommittees?
What?
Joking.
Oh, I thought you weren't.
You have to
Motion
define
to
that
adjourn.
first.
No, these are all the reports you have at the end of the meeting.
Oh, yeah, no, we're done.
Good call.